Let us start this session with the name of Allah, the recitation of Holy Quran. Saqib, are you here?
إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.
Sadaqallahu al-Azim. We have sent you the program, nearly all of you. Let me tell you about a little bit about what will the sequence of the event and what we will do. We have 13 panelist speaker students from all over the world. These are the countries. We have a student from Canada. We have a student from America. We have a student from Philippines. We have a student from Kenya, Ras Al Khaimah, UAE. And we have a student from Pakistan as well. And it's a big hand of collaboration, IFMSA, International Federation of Medical Students. So they help us a lot in selection of our great speakers here. Do we have Saqib, VC Sab with us? May I invite our Vardi Vice Chancellor for the welcoming remarks?
No, ma'am, he's not here yet.
Okay, then you can contact with Latif.
Yes, ma'am.
Meanwhile, the VC Sab arrive. May I invite our first speaker, Dr. Aliezeh Fatima Rai. She is the president of IFMSA Pakistan. She is from the Faculty of Health and Sciences, CMH Lahore Medical and Dental College. Her topic and title of the talk is Struggles of a Final Year Student with Clinical Method. Dr. Aliezeh Fatima Rai. Aliezeh, you can share your slide, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rahila, for the introduction. Just give me a second and I'll share the slide. I think I have sent the slide to Sir Latif. Sir Latif, can you please share it?
Aren't you able to share your slides?
No, I won't be able to share mine on this
Okay,
device.
wait a minute.
Can you share from your laptop? Thank you.
Yes, please wait a minute.
Till the time that the slides are being shared, I would just like to thank all the attendees as well as all the speakers who came on behalf of IFMSA International as well as IFMSA Pakistan. Thank you so much. And I would also like to thank Dr. Rahila for extending this hand of collaboration with IFMSA Pakistan. I think I'll just start anyway so that we don't waste any of our attendees' precious time. So as Dr. Rahila has already introduced me and has already told that I'll be talking about the struggles of a final year medical student with the clinical methods in this time of COVID pandemic. So I would like to start with Assalamu alaikum. My name is Aliezeh Fatima Rai, and I will move on with discussing how we face these struggles in Pakistan as well as internationally. So there's a very famous quotation that circulates among medical students, and I quote, "The chapter that you're learning today is going to save someone's life tomorrow, so pay attention." Now, as I tell you guys this quotation, I would like to raise a question over here that will this be enough? Will the book suffice my skills when it comes to saving the life of a patient in the near future? How will I develop the muscle memory to save the patient of a DKA when he presents in the emergency? Will I be able to cruise through the ATLS protocol when it comes to attending a trauma patient? How will I develop my reflexes when it comes to stopping a bleed in the ER? Do you think I will know the exact amount of pressure that I have to exert to bring about a precise 4 to 5 centimeter compression while performing a CPR? I feel these are very genuine concerns and worries of a final year medical student. Considering I am in my final year, I can see this. I await spending time with patients in the hospital setting. So while this approach of staying at home and keeping everybody safe, including the medical students, I feel like we're missing a major piece of the puzzle, which according to me is basically patient interaction. So this pandemic has brought on several things. And as far as medical students are concerned, it has taken away a hallmark of medical education. The doctor, patient, student rounds, which are very effective ways of teaching medical students how to brainstorm and basically formulate possible diagnoses. We don't have them anymore. So according to me, I feel that there is a lag, but I wish that this lag is temporary. And we final year medical students can manage to fill the gap in terms of polishing and perfecting our clinical skills and providing a quality healthcare to the patients that will be coming to us. So according to me, I feel that the concept of the healing touch of doctors has already started to fade away because of the 6 feet distance created by COVID pandemic. It has been imposed on all of us. So while this devastating time is making it very difficult for us, I feel that as medical students, it is imperative we work and we develop strategies and fallback plans to not let anyone suffer at the hands of a medical student that basically graduated during this COVID times. I'm speaking on my behalf, but I would like to address my fellow medical students as well. This is not the end of your story, and this does not define you. It might be the end of medical school though, but we are survivors of this pandemic. We are alive and we're strong. And to all you out there, we are not undereducated medical students. We know our deficiencies, we know our shortcomings, and we're working on them. We do not wish to compromise on the standard of healthcare that you deserve. It is very important for us, so we want to keep all these perspectives in our mind. However, I do feel that this vulnerability will be our strength, and our lack of clinical exposure will not define us. Instead, we will reach our potential as soon as this pandemic ends. Medical students are developing strategies to practice clinical methods at home. This goes for all medical students who are in their clinical years. We are perfecting our skills with what's available. So we might not know how to apply stitches, or we might not know how to counsel patients, but this doesn't mean we're not practicing. All the virtual platforms, all the simulations, the Google meetings, as well as the Zoom meetings and the problem-based learning, we're using all of those in our favor. So basically, online resources have made education accessible as well as easy. I feel all of us have the leverage in whichever field we are. We have the leverage to refer to most of the educational material when it comes and whenever we want to. We might easily be able to learn inspection and auscultation in terms of examination from online resources. But I feel that we still need to teach ourselves and accustom our fingers to pick up clinical findings when it comes to palpation and percussion. We cannot miss them. We need to practice and learn how to differentiate a direct inguinal hernia from an indirect one. We cannot compromise on these things. We are also expected to have empathy when we're interacting with patients. We need to know how to counsel the patients. We're always told we do not have to use medical jargon and technical terms in front of our patients. These are just a few things that we learn in the clinical settings. There's several more aspects that we have to work on slowly. We have to perfect these skills as time progresses so that we can provide a quality health care to the patients who we will be attending. Our foundation might not be strong. And I feel that when we're going to be going in the hospitals, our senior attendings and our doctors will have to put in some extra effort and they will have to play a major role in our initial trainings. We might need a little assistance. We might need some extra supervision in the clinical settings. We might need a little more correction here and there, but we're willing to go through that. So this time has been very different for everyone, but I feel we all can relate to a quote by Charles Darwin. So I would like to state his quote: "It is not the most intellectual of the species that survives. It's not the strongest that survives, but the species that survives is the one that is able best to adapt and adjust to the changing environment in which it finds itself." I feel this is what we have been experiencing as well. From learning to operate college websites to giving online exams, from realizing the value of hospital wards to watching videos of examinations online. We have underestimated the importance of people around us, and now we're yearning for the presence of class fellows. Basically, we have undergone several experiences which have made us stronger, I feel, and actually they have also helped us take a back seat, zoom out of our perspectives and ponder over our education system and the available resources we have that right now, obviously. I feel we cannot underestimate the value still, apart from everything, we cannot underestimate the value of this moment now here. Some medical students have been volunteering in hospitals, while others have been volunteering in clinics. Some have also previously done electives, that means hands-on clinical experience. Now there's another thing that is here, which is virtual shadowing. A lot of people have also done virtual shadowing. All such students will definitely have an edge over the rest of the medical students who couldn't stack up on those extra hours of clinical exposure. So I feel that let's effectively use what we have and without underestimating our potential, make all this fruitful in terms of succeeding in the future healthcare profession. We medical students have the power to define our path from this point onwards. Let's not let the pandemic negatively impact our growth at all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Aliezeh, for a wonderful toss, an informative talk for all of us. We'll take you again in question answer and panel discussion. Thank you, ma'am. May I invite our worthy great Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Anis Ahmed, to welcome you all. Sir, please, over to you, sir. Sir, अपना mic on कीजिएगा, sir. Speaker, sir.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, I thank Dr. Rahila and the young team she has been able to synergize and put together who are here as panelists. I am here to learn from you, your experiences, your problems and difficulties. But first of all, I think it's extremely a progressive step taken by our rare in order to bring students themselves to speak on this very crucial moment. COVID-19 is not just a matter of a temporary phenomena, but I think it has brought a very deep impact on the overall learning processes in universities, particularly medical science. And I'm glad that participants from 9 different countries, 13 panelists, all of them practically involved in this educational learning process have joined here. I welcome all of you. And I believe that with your very deep insight in the issues, we, the facilitator, will be able to better understand issues you are facing, and perhaps we together search for solutions. As an educationist, I firmly believe in a classroom environment. I firmly believe that No one can replace the physical contact that is required in learning process, uh, particularly in psychomotor skills. It's very much necessary in engineering, in medical science, in physiotherapy, everywhere. Nevertheless, we have to face the challenge, and I fully endorse the idea of Aliezeh that we should not feel frustrated. We have to be very hopeful, optimistic, and when we work together, I am sure we'll learn more. Every difficulty brings a silver lining, and I am sure this problem will open new horizons for us and those will benefit us in our learning process. I welcome all of you again and hope this symposia will help not only you, but we, the educationists, to assist you in learning process. May Allah bless you all. Thank you again.
Jazakallah, sir, for giving your valuable time. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. May I invite our next speaker, Mr. Sarim Jamal. Currently he's doing his Master of Science in Management Strategy from Smith School of Business at Queen's University, Canada. His topic of talk is Impact on Administrative Economics for Student Support. Sarim, please, may I invite you?
Thank you very much, Dr. Rahila, and good morning, afternoon, and evening to all of you. Very nice to be a part of this community, and I think it comes at a very strong time when we need to have cross-cutting dialogue at this time, right? So I was requested to elaborate a bit on the economic angle, given my strategy background right now and my previous life at LUMS as an econ undergrad. So apart from this, I live and breathe economics as a senior program officer at the Asia Foundation's Pakistan office. Just a little quick intro about myself. So I have dedicated my little but impactful professional life towards sustainability, and Queen Smith School of Business's MSc in strategy is a reflection of that. My research interest basically goes to the idea that how do energy sector firms in this contemporary time face barriers towards moving towards sustainability. So that is pretty much where I'm coming from. Now, just to give a little sort of background before we go ahead and think of this talk, right? This the value of this presentation is for those people who are a part of an international research sort of an institution, meaning that they're either going for their MPhil or their masters or their PhDs abroad. And like many of you, I myself was very excited to do research in sustainability and hopefully give back to the academia in Pakistan one day, right? But before when I was applying for the visa, suddenly the COVID-19 pandemic hits and everything moves online, your classes move online. The sort of plans you had to do your research, to meet diverse people, to meet diverse sort of lecturers, to meet diverse sort of panelists, that suddenly evaporated in the air. And we then got used to this screen sort of an interaction, which is also good because we all get a chance to talk, right? So very quickly coming to the topic of this presentation, right? So from an economic angle, what happens to the administration of the international students who, just can't go into their newfound homes, their newfound universities, right? So the very first thing that I think it's very important for both the developing country and the developed country context is that research students bridge a whole wide of gap in terms of diplomacy. They bridge a gap in terms of diversity issues, and they bridge a gap by bringing a very unique sort of lens, right? But the sad reality is that international institutions are very expensive, and we often rely on scholarships, we often rely on aids. Myself, I'm a fully funded degree student at the Smith School, right? And I'm very grateful to be researching sustainability in Pakistan. on behalf of a very strong research institute that is Queen's. So the first complexity that comes in, right? If you don't get your visa, if you're not registered in any sort of government mandated body, right, in your new university, how does your aid gets transferred? So this was a very sort of frustrating and challenging sort of aspect to just start my studies, not having the surety that my fully funded aid would be allowed by the government. The university was all for it, but it was a governmental issue. So this sort of ambiguity continued, but it got handled. But it also contributed to a lot of stress that I think impacted my performance in the course at the start. Okay. And then, the second thing that really hampers the administrative function of the university, which is derived from the word academy, right? A community where people come and talk. This online sort of setting reduces the level of community that we all have. And I think, eventually over time, international students who are self sort of paying, who want to go and get that exposure, will in the short term not go to these universities abroad, and it will create a wide gap in terms of economics for research in the international sphere, and it will also create a gap in terms of diversity as well, because we won't have a lot of students from humble backgrounds in developing countries spending their money abroad and getting that research exposure, because why would you pay thousands of dollars for a Zoom call, right? That is the sort of things that we hear in this time. And just quickly, another aspect I think very important for student life right now is that uh, the academia, the university at a postgraduate level is supposed to encourage critical thinking in the form of conferences, in the form of co-curricular activities, in the form of case sort of studies being done all the time, right? Where does that go in this contemporary time, and what does this lack of activity do for international universities' reputation? So with that, I would just quickly like to come over to the academic sort of hampering in terms of economics, just to, give three concrete factors on how the academia is also affected. So I think the first thing is that, like very rightly pointed out by the previous speaker as well, right? Learning outcomes for students are often a miss. So when you think of applying to international universities, you look at QS rankings, you look at times-based rankings before going there. So what happens to them in this contemporary time? Do they change their indices? Do they change their methods of ranking universities? I think that is a very important thing, which will eventually determine the economics of a university's funding and the level of grants that it gets from the government, right? How do you ensure quality? And that also impacts the student as well, because like it or not, the reputation of their degree is diminished. Employers say that, what's the point of doing something completely online? You should go and get that experience, and you should hold out on higher education before, after, in a post-COVID world. So that's another very important issue. And I think, in the long-term sphere of things, academia, especially within the business world, has been greatly under attack for basically not giving enough returns on investment. Research is often too bookish rather than in real life. And there are numerous counterexamples for this, numerous theories for this, numerous firms like McKinsey and Company, which use a management research approach. But over time, I think one of the lasting legacies of COVID-19 will be that practice will rise over the academy. People will go for entrepreneurship and startups, more feasible, less expensive, more economical ways of gaining that exposure rather than going to a degree. And I think we will lose out a lot on the research insights that research students and doctoral scholars eventually bring, right? if this pandemic is not resolved in the near term. So this has a lot of effects on the learning outcomes for students as well. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this little sort of an economic analysis I put together. And I hope you just realize the value of the academy as well. Because in practice, we do what is practical, but in academy, we think about the ideals. And I think thinking about the ideals leads to higher level outcomes for both the economy and for both the social good. So thank you very much for your time, and please stay in touch on LinkedIn and Twitter. I would love to keep the conversation going. Thank you. On to you, Dr. Aila.
Thank you, thank you, Sarim Jamal. You have conveyed us very informative talk. We have a question with you, and we will talk to you in this panel discussion. So stay tuned with us if possible. Okay.
Of course.
At the end of this.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sarim. May I invite over the next speaker, Javier Shafick Asfura. Javier is sixth-year medical student at National Autonomous University of Honduras, America. And currently he's the regional director for the America at IFMSA and the vice president for external affairs for IFMSA Honduras. Javier, are you here? Please share your PowerPoint. Yes, we can see you. We can see your slide. Yes, please. Over to you.
Your mic is at mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, please.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So hello, everyone. My name is Javier Asfura. I'm well, just to clarify, a bit, medicine here in Honduras takes 8 years. So I'm pretty much at the end of the academic years per se. And then I have my internship year, which is my 7th year, and then my mandatory social service year, which is my 8th year. So right now I'm a 6th-year medical student, and the topic for today is pretty much about the truth behind online learning, seeing it from a student perspective, but also sort of as a professor perspective, since I also deliver some sessions to some students in the faculty. So the way I tried to structure this was sort of on 6 main points, 6 main reflections for the topic of today. And it's some things that we have been seeing, at least in my faculty, since March, that the pandemic began really in my country here in Honduras. And we have been in quarantine. We were in quarantine since the end of March, for example, until up to pretty much the first week of November. So it is until now that things are starting to go theoretically back to normality, except for medical education. So what has been happening? First of all, when everything arrived in March, right? Everyone, all of the medical students were retired from the hospitals. All of us were sent back homes just for the sake of not getting infected and not having any risks in the hospital, because at the moment we didn't have any personal protective equipment. So there was this huge and complete shift to online education, and which is actually my main reflection point here, that no one was prepared, neither professors nor students. And people may be saying, and you have like 2 streams of thought here, people that mentions that everyone is prepared to online education, that it is just the same. It's just you just have to connect to a Zoom call, for example. And there's the other part that mentions that it is completely different. I say that there is sort of a balance, because pretty much the same content that you would receive in a physical class, you're receiving it on an online setting. The differences are, of course, the interaction, face-to-face, people seeing each other's eyes whenever you're speaking, when you're raising your hands, when you're asking a question, when you're seeing patients, which is the main point here that we are missing, or supposedly missing, with online education. So this is actually my first reflection for today, and is what we had to learn how to e-learn. The second point is, of course, what happens with the practice. and we are only having theoretical classes, theoretical classes. What happens with seeing patients? What happens with interpreting X-rays, interpreting EKGs? What happens with all of this practical stuff we usually do at our hospitals, at our wards, for example, and even not only for the clinical setting, but also for the basic sciences students? What happens there? What happens with the students that usually went to a histology laboratory, who did physiology tests, biochemistry? So what happens with all of these things? And one of the key points here, and it's something that always my semiology and my internal medicine professors mention, is that our eyes cannot see what the mind doesn't know. So when all of this started, I always try to tell my classmates that even if we were back at the hospital, if we were not receiving any classes, it is impossible for us to diagnose a disease, to know how to perform a correct physical examination. So for me, being at the online setting, this is pretty much the key point here, to constantly keep studying and to keep gaining all of this knowledge for whenever we go back to the practice, we will already be able to integrate this theoretical knowledge we have been gaining and just passing it to the practice. And the other point here is that we can actually compensate through different digital platforms and simulators. You have a lot of applications where you can have simulations with patients, where you can be in a surgical simulator, for example. I have used a lot of them, and they're pretty nice, I would say, to at least go over the steps of a procedure, for example. So you will already know all of these steps for whenever you have to go back to the hospitals. The next point I have here is that there are internal and external factors that make it difficult to study from home. And one point here is, of course, motivation. How can I keep engaged in my class if I am not motivated? And this has to do with the second point you can see there, which is my mental health. And it's something that most of us forget most of the times, that students are also suffering from anxiety. Some of their family members are also getting sick. So this is affecting them mentally, which of course makes it difficult to be learning and trying to concentrate in the online classes. Having a correct or an adequate study setting, being able to sit down on a desk silently without nobody bothering or having to do other responsibilities in my house or in my apartment or with other people. And of course, trying to have the integration of the whole learning cycle, where I can read a topic, where I can receive a lecture, but I can also receive some questions and evaluate myself to see how well did I try to learn this knowledge, and then try to make an analysis. Am I being efficient in my learning? Did I learn everything? Do I need to go over something specifically? So these are my first three reflections, and my other three reflections here are: the first one, for this is mainly for professors, and it's try to keep it interactive and dynamic, because this is not only about being in Zoom, it's maybe about trying to integrate other platforms. For example, Google Blackboards or Miro, or even using applications like Kahoot to make evaluations more interactive. This would definitely change all of the dynamics that you have with the students, and for us as well to keep more engaged and interested in classes. The next one is to be aware about students' limitations and individual problems. And it's because some of them are facing economical issues and can't afford internet or don't have a stable connection to be in there in the classes presentially. And of course, some students had to start working at home to receive some money for their families, and some students' families are sick. So these are all of the considerations we need to have whenever we talk about online education, online learning. And my last point here, which I think it's the most important one from my side, and it's that there's not a definitive method on how to teach and study medicine online. And here's where meaningful student engagement come. And it's for both, for students to try to raise our voices and say, suggestions, doctor, we would like to change something, we would like to change the teaching method, let's try doing clinical cases, let's try having more lectures or having more simulators, for example. And then the other part for the faculty staff, and it's trying to hear the students and try to integrate these options into the class, because it would definitely change all the dynamics in learning, and specifically for something so difficult, which is medicine online. So these are my main reflections here. At least this has been my case and for my classmates in my university. And if you want to keep in touch, then you can definitely just search me in social media there as Javier Asfura. And I'm definitely up for some conversations in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very useful and wonderful talk by Javier. Thank you. Please stay tuned with us for the panel discussion. We have some questions from you. Thank you, Javier. Okay, thank you. May I invite our next speaker, Mr. Bilal Qureshi. He is the student of Computer Sciences, Data Sciences, Macquarie University, Sydney, Australia. Previously, he was working with the Zong, Pakistan as a business support system officer in information technology. May I invite Bilal Qureshi?
Thank you. I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yeah.
Put it on the PowerPoint mode, please.
Presentation
mode.
It's done.
Yes, please.
Thank you and good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I would like to thank the faculty of Rakib University for inviting me for this talk. My topic is on challenges in online teaching assessments and how the assessment has changed once the COVID-19 struck in Australia. So a general overview of what happened in Australia once the COVID-19 was struck. So the decision was taken in March, right? So the government was saying that the university should be closed, and on the other hand, the universities were saying that we should be open, and some universities want to be open, some universities want to be closed. There was a lot of debate, but most of the politicians wanted the universities to open, whereas the universities themselves want to be closed. So they had a lot. They had about 2 weeks to take this decision, and what they did was they had to trust, the universities had to trust the research that the COVID-19 itself was very deadly, and they decided to eradicate the classes, the on-campus classes, and they had to move to online classes, of course. So how were they able to do it? All of the universities in Australia already had an online teaching system. So even before COVID-19, if you miss any classes, you can already take them online. So this was one good thing. They were already had a backup, but still there was a lot of debate going on. The classes were on campus and everything had to shut down. So the government wanted universities to open, but the universities went away from government's advice and they closed them. So props to them. So what happened was, how did the online lectures change from the lectures that were taught in the university? So as we all know, there were Zoom lectures. In some cases, the Zoom lectures weren't used, just like the streaming services. They just uploaded the lectures. Some of the students debated, why are you uploading the lectures? Why aren't there any online lectures? The professors, they just instigated that they don't need a Zoom lecture. They just want a lecture that can be uploaded. It's the same thing, right? So this was the problematic issue, right? To debate in person. So what happened was, up till May, the campus was closed. So after May, the campus was open. There was a hybrid learning. So you must have heard about the United States decision. The Harvard University took the hybrid learning on campus. So what they did was they took labs on campus and they did classes online. So what happened was, even though the labs were on campus, the students still weren't coming. So the professors were confused that the students were talking about having Zoom lectures. Now we have now we have opened the campus. Still, the students are not coming. So the students, some of the students were like, the COVID-19 still exists. We don't want to come. This was a lot of confusion going on this semester, and they still have to force the online classes, the on-campus classes to online classes. So one of the difficulty was coping up with the lectures. So for example, one was with the Zoom lectures and the other were the lectures that were just uploaded. So how are you going to cope with them if they're just being uploaded week by week? Some of the students weren't able to see the lectures because there wasn't no attendance system. Basically in Pakistan, there is an attendance system where students have to take the lectures, but this is not the case here. So you have to take the lectures by yourself, and mostly there was an online exam going on. So let me talk about online exams. So what happened was, more emphasis was given to assignments. So the assignment weightage was increased, about 60 to 70% were assignments. So this was something new for me. Back in my home country, I always gave exams on campus, but in this case, there was a take-home exam. The exam time was around 2 weeks. So it was like an analysis report where you have to write like 6,000 or 7,000 report within just 2 weeks and just submit the exam. This was really new. In some cases, the attendance system was totally abolished because it was absolutely no use. Online quizzes, there were time quizzes, but they actually made a new software, which was and how it worked was because, for example, there are 80 students. For each 80 students, it made 80 different questions. So, for example, each student will get its own question. This was randomly generated by the software that was used in university. There was a famous IT company that made the software. It was pretty good. So, time final online exam. This was also very really new for me. So, many of the students just write the exam and give it to the invigilator, right? In this case, once the exam was done, the student had to take the pictures and they had to upload the pictures on the Moodle. So this was a really time-consuming process. You have to do the exam, then you have to scan it on your scanner, and then upload it on the Moodle. So, but again, the cheating in the final exams was really difficult because there were timed exams, just like 1.5 hour time was remaining, and during the 1.5 hour, the questions, even though it was open book, but you couldn't just write the answers directly, even while seeing the books. So here's the interesting part of the slides: student mental health. Just 3 more slides and I'm done. So how was student mental health affected while the COVID-19 was happening in Australia? So it's no doubt that the international students were the most affected people in Australia. Uh, they were struck financially. Many of them, even though they weren't able to pay their tuition fees, but the Australian government told them to, because they forced them to cancel their student visas, which was really sad. They didn't. Some universities didn't help them extend their date to the date of the tuition fees. But on the other hand, some universities like my university did help a lot of students. They gave them food. They gave the around about $10 million of aid was given to students. Those who were really lacking aid, they were given $1,000 each. So which was really good. Students who didn't have laptop were also given laptop, which was also good. So now this was an interesting part, the failing grade. So many of the universities, around 80% of the universities have abolished the F grade. Other than that, instead of the F grade, the student will get an SC grade, which is known as special consideration. So the F grade won't be accumulated to your GPA. Rather than that, it would be withdrawn from your course. So this is something which was very well done by the Australian universities. The last 2 slides, what are the positives and negatives from the response taken from the Australian universities? Of course, as I told earlier, they were able to get funds. Hybrid learning, as I told you before, universities have because this wasn't thought before, so they thought that all the lectures aren't necessary should be taken in the online university. It should be hybrid. So, and by hybrid, we mean the lab should be on campus and the classes should be taken in campus. And mostly the social distancing was increased because you have to wear masks in the classes. No one can talk to at a certain distance. There was a lot of social distancing rules. So here's a major thing, the negatives about. So in my university, more than half of the faculties are being abolished right now. It's really sad to know students of psychology are forced to shift their faculty because universities here in Australia are lacking funds. Many of the professors are losing their jobs. Faculty of history is being closed. A lot of faculties, a lot of departments for mathematics are being closed because because the university is saying that the number of students are less than 30 in the faculty, so they have to close it. So for example, if there are 35 students in the class, that's okay. If they have 25, the faculty has to be, or the course has to be abolished, which was really sad. And last but not the least, to all the students who are questioning, is a university degree worth this time? With all the online classes going, you're not going on campus, is it worth it? So let's talk about before I conclude my presentation. So the number of international students have certainly been reduced by half. So before they were around every year there were about around 250,000 students coming in Australia. Right now, they're just fallen down to 60 or 70,000 because the international students are thinking that they are not a part of the Australian community. The Australian government haven't helped themselves, so they shouldn't go to Australia right now. The borders have been shut, as we all know, for it's been more than 7 months. No one can enter Australia. For some, no one can go outside, and no one can enter outside. And why should someone pay a lot of tuition fees for this type of experience right now, right? And mostly, is it same as Coursera and Khan Academy? So everyone is like, if I want to pursue a master's of data science, I should just go for the data science. Most of you know the data science program in Coursera. I should do that. So let me tell you why this is different from Coursera and why university education is still important, right? I believe that the degrees given in Coursera are not very good. Most of the the people in panel discussion are doctors, and they can tell you that you can't be a doctor by just attending Coursera or Khan Academy. It's not sufficient. You can't be a civil engineer by attending Coursera degree. Even with the IT, you can't be a data scientist by attending a Coursera degree because the level of difficulty of that course doesn't match the level of difficulty, even in online from the university. So, a lot of employees came from Amazon in my university and Google. They still told me that they hire most of the graduates that they hire in their company are masters and PhD students. They're not people who have diplomas right now. So those people who are there's a huge fuss going around about Google that they have have made an online degrees on Coursera. If you do those degrees, you will get a job on Google. I don't think that is true, mostly because the research department still needs people for masters and PhD, and the complexity of the software that they have is still a lot to comprehend. And as someone with not having a college degree cannot do that. So the universities right now are more focused on research. There's a new job market going on. They need more people in medical side. They need more people in biomedical. And once this is done, I still believe that the value of college degree will come along. So it's not about the experience you're getting; it's about the value of the degree that you have. So doing a course or a degree will actually lead to salaries going down because you're not actually putting on account to education. So if you have a very good college degree, then the companies can pay you better. You are worth more in the market. Thank you.
Thank you, Bilal. Thank you, Bilal. Thank you very much. Very valuable and very detailed talk, and we gain a lot from your talk. May I invite our next speaker, Mr. Hani Siddiqui. He is electrical engineer from University of Calgary, Canada. His title of the talk is COVID Challenges and Opportunity Inside and Outside of Class. Hani is a final year student of studies at University of Calgary, and he is studying the electrical engineering. Hani, please, you can share your PowerPoint.
Thank you for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you, and we can see your PowerPoint. Yes, please.
Perfect. All right, so the topic of my the talk today is, as Doctor mentioned, is the COVID challenges and opportunities inside and outside of class. And the reason I talk about this is because the challenges that we face outside of class affect the performance that we have inside of class as well. Just a quick little intro about me. I was born in Lahore in 1997, and I moved out of Lahore to Abu Dhabi for a couple of years in 2003. And then in 2005, I moved to Canada and been living here since. I'm currently pursuing my Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering at the University of Calgary. And I am the current past chair of the IEEE student branch at the University of Calgary. And some of my hobbies are, I used to be on the Dino Squash team, and I like to do investing as well on the side. So to start my talk, So to start my talk, basically, we have noticed that over time, we have, in these unprecedented times, we have a lot of challenges, and some of them affect us quite a bit. So I'll go over some of these challenges right now in this slide. So our first challenge is that basically it is impossible to meet face-to-face without compromising the safety of yourself and those around you. We have masks that work great and that work to some degree, But despite the use of masks, they are an excellent use for prevention, but they can only do so much. And the resulting effect of this is that we are in complete isolation and we have minimal interaction, which is not good for our well-being. As humans, we all require a certain amount of degree of social interaction with one another. I did some research online and found that I don't have a reference, unfortunately, but I found that you can Google it yourself as well if you'd like, is that lonely people who don't have as much interaction with each other tend to face some issues with their brain. These aren't major issues, but over time they can deepen with mental health. We found that they found that lonely people have reduced brain volumes in the prefrontal cortex section of their brain. And I'm sure there's a lot of medical students out here who know exactly what the prefrontal cortex section is and what it does, but I'll just quickly go over it. The prefrontal cortex basically is responsible for your cognitive behavior, such as decision making. They also found that we have a smaller hippocampus, resulting in impaired learning and impaired memory. So that's quite a big issue. As students, we need to be 100% when we're trying to learn and we're trying to make decision making as well. And we need to have good memories for obviously all those exams and whatnot, right? So that is obviously a big challenge. Another challenge is the routine challenge. Usually when you're going to school, you have a set routine. You wake up at a certain time, you get dressed, you get ready, you have breakfast, you go on your commute, whether it's walk, train, bus, car, whatever it may be, and you get to the university at a certain time, you eat lunch at a certain time, you finish your class at a certain time, you study during a certain time, and you get home at a certain time as well. But unfortunately, that has gone away as well. Classes are sometimes optional, so you may or may not attend them. Even if they aren't optional, you sometimes may or may not attend them. And we tend to have late nights and early and late mornings as well as on weekends. That has always been the case, but even on weekdays, sometimes if you have optional classes, and for some people, it might even be late afternoons. So you have to be wary of that. You don't have a gym anymore. You may or may not have a gym. In some places like in Calgary where I live, it is still legal to go to the gym, but it may not be safe. In some places, it may just be illegal altogether. Same goes with the library and any setting where there are multiple people around you. And I already mentioned the commute to school. That's gone away as well. With online classes, we also find that it's tough to focus. You don't have a physical professor. You don't physically have a professor in front of you, which can be kind of tough, because when you have a professor in front of you, you can they're right there and you can focus on them the entire time. Now, it's all online, so you have a lower ability to pay attention. There are more distractions around you. You can be attending class, but at the same time be on your phone, being distracted by Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, your computer, YouTube, whatever it may be. And what I found is that the toughest part of online classes is that it's really tough to make connections with your professor, connections with the people, your students around you as well. What you notice is that, at least for me, the biggest motivation for me to go to school was not only to learn, but it was to meet other people as well. And that's being taken away because you're not physically there. You can't look to the person to the left or to the right and say, hey, how's it going? Do you understand this problem? How about we study together, whatnot? That doesn't happen anymore. It's all online. And that kind of sucks because one of the big reasons for going to school is to meet other people. So those are some of the challenges that we face with COVID as well right now. But with these challenges come opportunities. So for the first one, the minimal social interaction, some of the strategies that we can use to overcome this is, well, to increase social interaction. People ask how. We are living in COVID times. How can we increase social interaction? Well, you always have to have a sort of a communication with the outside world. Now, you can do that with friends, with family, your loved ones as well. Now, with friends, I'll start with family first. Is if you live with your family, if you're lucky enough to live with your family during these times, or in general, spend time with your loved ones. This is really important because spending time with your loved ones is not only important as a human being, but it fuels you, it helps you be more content as well. therefore increasing your productivity, making you more content, and making you more efficient when you're studying and whatnot, because you're less down, you feel less down, because every time you feel down, your family is the person, are the people that you need to go to first. So how do you do this? You spend time playing board games, card games with your parents or your siblings. Have short but meaningful conversations as well about what you're going through, about the tough times that we are all going through. And if you don't live with your family, unfortunately, if you're an international student like a lot of us are, I thankfully am not. But if I were to go through that same thing, it'd be very simple. Just FaceTime, video call, do what you need to do. You can even play online games together as well. And same thing with your friends. FaceTime, video call, and this one might not be settled well with everyone here, but you can also play video games with your friends. Now, playing video games is a waste of time in general, but if you're able to keep in contact through a mic or whatnot, that will increase your social interaction as well, and that is very important, because increasing your social interaction is the most important part of the times that we live in, because that's what has been taken away from us, and doing whatever you can to do that is really important. The second thing is the irregular routine. What you notice is that like I said, we don't have a regular routine anymore, but it's really important to keep a routine still wherever you can, so that you can train your mind and your brain to get ready for a successful day every single day. You need to shower, get ready, smell good, even if you're not going to go out and see someone or meet anyone, still smell good if you can. Eat breakfast, go for a quick morning walk, or even a workout or something if weather permitting. I live in Canada, the weather is kind of cold here, so it's tough to do that. But if you're in Pakistan, that might be a lot easier. And the third thing is the zero commute. With a zero commute, yes, you are out of routine. You don't have that commute that usually lets you fuel up for your day every day. But the silver lining is that you have a lot more free time. For me, it takes me 2.5 hours to get to school and back every single day. That time has been shaved off and I have it on me now. So with that free time, what you can do is you can spend that extra time on school, or you can spend that extra time on yourself. I would recommend spending that extra time on yourself, because when you spend time on yourself, you have a good balance, you are more content, therefore you are more productive and more efficient as well. The saying that I like to use all the time is very famous, and I'm sure you've all heard it, is that you need to work smart, not hard. Working hard is good, but working smart is even more important. And that means spending time on yourself as well. So you can learn to play an instrument, pick up a new hobby, or even join a club at school. I picked up a new hobby. I started investing, and I found that was a really good use of my time, because I'm learning lots and I'm able to spend time on something that's not just school. And that's really important to get yourself re-energized. However, if you are one of those people that likes to procrastinate and does not get too much work done on the regular, I'd consider spending that extra time studying, so you don't feel as overwhelmed and you are less stressed down the road for exam season. And finally, there are no in-person classes anymore. So what that means is, like I said before, professor is not physically in front of you, lower ability to pay attention. But the silver lining to that is that you are less likely to feel intimidated. When you are in in-person classes and you have 50, 100, 200, 300, 500 students around you sitting in the same room as you, that is a very daunting situation. So what you can do is, since you are feeling less intimidated, please start asking more questions. Turn on your mic. No one can see you, so you might as well ask those questions that you wouldn't normally ask in a regular classroom setting. Ask questions in the chat if it suits you better as well, but there's no need to raise your hand anymore. You're not in front of 150 students. Ask those questions, be more involved in those lectures, even if they're online, because it's less daunting. That way you can take advantage of this time. But those are some of the challenges and opportunities that we face with the COVID lifestyle. But my main point is, keep your life outside of school. Focus on the life outside of school now that you are not going to school as much anymore, in order to fuel yourself so that you can be ready for the time that you are at school. And yeah, that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much for your time. If you'd like to stay in touch, here are my LinkedIn and Instagram handles. Go ahead and add me and we can continue the conversation over there as well. Thank you so much for inviting me. I hope you all have a great day, night, or evening as well.
Thank you, Hani. Another valuable, very useful talk from the Hani. Stay tuned with us. We have a question from you, okay?
Okay,
Thank you,
perfect.
Hani. Okay. Let me invite the next speaker, Mr. Rakib Hossain Dewan from Business Management. Rakib is former president, Student Representative Council of Segi College, Kota Damansara, Malaysia. Rakib, can you start your presentation?
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. You
I
can
have
share
like
your PowerPoint, please.
yes, I will do that right now. Just give me a moment. I'm extremely sorry for the difficulties.
Yes, we can see your PowerPoint. We can.
Okay. All right. So moving forward, I'm Rakib. It was really, firstly, thank you so much, Ripa International University and Dr. Rahila, for letting me be a part of this. And of course, all the speakers that I've been hearing all from the time we joined. It was really nice hearing you guys. It was quite, what do you call it, educational. Thank you so much for your talk. I will go with mine. So basically, my topic is about youth in COVID-19. I'm pretty sure Mr. Uh, Salim and Mr. Bilal, you have already spoken few things about what I was actually thinking as well. Now going towards my slide. So my topic is about, of course, the youth in COVID-19. But before I start, I would like to point out these things, if you can see in my slide: social, anxiety, depression, and economic integration. Now, these 4 points have been an issue even before COVID-19 struck. And this has been an issue for the youth. And it has become more visible during this pandemic. Just imagine one morning we woke up and the whole world is, it has been frozen. We cannot move, we cannot do anything, we cannot meet the people we love, we cannot even see them, let alone talking or touching them. And imagine this people, this extrovert people. And if you actually read my biography, I have also said that I'm like a people's person. So these people who like to be around people and joining social gatherings, it was like a halt for everyone, literally the whole wide world, talking about the economic depression and social anxiety. All these things happen just in one morning. And I am a student from India, but then I'm currently studying in Malaysia. So in Malaysia, this whole SOP standard operating procedure has been being maintained very strictly, and they're really trying their hard, but we're still in our third wave. Now, going back to the point, anxiety, FOMO, basically the fear of missing out. These things were already striking so many students, so many youth in Malaysia, even under my own eyesight. I've seen it. So this pandemic that happened, that struck and brought this whole 2020 and made it a nightmare for a lot of students. This was the what do you call it, biggest challenge that students faced so far. Now, what is being affected? I would like to show you a chart, and basically I will not be talking much about what happened, because a lot of people, a lot of speakers before me, they have shared certain points, and I'll go with them certain points that I agree. I'd like to add my points to it. But going back to the fact that what is being affected, I'll share a chart, right? So if you can see from this chart, you can see that there is the rise in mental health, employment, and education. All these things have been affected drastically, and we all know how things change overnight. I think Mr. Bilal was talking about how international students in Australia were facing challenges, right? I'm talking about youth. Imagine you're in a country. I'm talking on the basis of Malaysia, and with due respect to the country and everything. Imagine you're in a country where you, being of the same age to other people in your same house, are being treated differently. Yes, at first there were so many benefits that were given to the Malaysian students, who were being aided with 100 ringgit in their account, And also they had other fringe benefits that they were receiving. And not to forget, their parents were around, even though they were not allowed to travel interstate. But for international students, we were stuck. And not only we were stuck, we had nowhere to go. And we were in a situation, we were not even allowed to go out of our house, mostly because of, not only because we're international, because it was in such a period of time, because during March, more than 60% of universities, they renew their visas. So in this period, a lot of international students, including myself, were stuck at home because we cannot go outside. And using pandemic as an excuse was not being accepted in the beginning. Later, which was improvised well. So we had nothing to do, nowhere to go. We couldn't even get money because banks were closed. We couldn't even get groceries because we were scared we would catch COVID. And the fear of catching COVID was more dangerous than actually the disease itself, which I think I have seen in everyone and which we all know that has happened. And the fact that we were stuck and we had no help in the same house where a lot of my friends who are not international were being aided. However, government was kind enough. Our university, I'm from State University, by the way. Our government and also our university was kind enough to aid us with groceries, and then we got food for 3 whole months. But the what made it more worse was we were going to get our food and we couldn't even talk to the people we used to hang out literally a week, let's say a month ago. And the fact that was killing us, it's because we were scared that what if I am the reason to transfer the disease, or the other person is putting it back to me, even though we were living in the same apartment and not going out of the house. Now these are situations of in the beginning that has happened. Slowly, when the lockdown was taken off, this whole thing that was the pandemic that was actually affecting the whole wide world, we are, if you see from the world's point of view, if we see from government and from the external point of views, we were only judging and maintaining basically we were maintaining the economic breakdown that happened, and then the frustration the countries were facing. We were only judging those, but what we fail to see are the students, are the youth. What happened to them? Let's if I segregate them point by point. um, Imagine you are a student, a working student, you lose your job. Okay, you lose your job even though you're the one who's aiding your own fund. You lose your job, you don't even know you will be able to get up tomorrow morning and you'll be able to attend your classes, because you don't know if your internet is going to work, or you will be able to pay your bills for your Wi-Fi. And then adding up to that, you're not being able to contact your parents, and let alone contacting, what if even in your family some financial constraints are going on. So these things and then on top of that, we had assignments, we had submissions. I think all the students over here, who I think a lot of you can relate to me, that the number of assignments increased, obviously, because that was the only way to educate ourselves. So number of assignments that increase, number of alternative what do you call it, courseworks that increase, tutorials. And what everyone failed to notice is what were these students going through. Because just like Mr. Bilal said about the students suffering for in Australia, right? Like, how faculties were closing down. This were actually, this is not an issue in Australia. That has happened, I believe, in a lot of countries, and I have seen in my own university, faculties were merged, broke down into the broken down faculties were merged into one big faculty, and that's how we started working. Lecturers changed. Imagine you are online, you have your own you know that so and so subject is being taught by so and so person, and suddenly this is a different person who's teaching you this. So all this happened, and we couldn't do anything because we were stuck at our houses. And not to forget, if I mean, in Malaysia, the universities, what we are famous for is having extracurricular activities. The whole year, we have events, numerous events, which keeps us going. Trust me, I myself, I used to go to university for my events, and which is why probably I was voted as the first international student to be the student council president in all over Malaysia, and all the students all over Malaysia as from the students representative. Okay, so yeah, going back to the fact that we were only going to universities. I mean, from our point of view, that we want to enjoy our college life, because that's what something what we always think about, that we, okay, finally schools are done, we're going to go to college, we're going to live our life. But no, that didn't happen. We were stuck at our own houses with depression, anxiety, FOMO, fear of missing out, and all those things. And the worst part was we couldn't do anything about it. And the fact that there isn't anything that we can do at all either, other than just hoping that this thing will go away, or hoping that we will get vaccinated. Now, this anxiety, this stress of having something around you, something that you cannot see, something that you cannot feel or touch, will get you without even you knowing about it. Now, that is what was killing people more than the disease itself. And then the number of cases which were increasing all over the world, the death rates, any normal person would be affected by that. And a lot of us staying at home, which also caused a lot of people with overthinking, that input that kept on increasing with it, and which actually caused to a lot of mental damages to a lot of youth over there. Because we are the generation who is growing up right now. Like, this is our time to actually explore. And what we were exploring is our kitchen to our bedroom, and maybe to learning what I think a lot of us can relate to this. A lot of people learn cooking who didn't know how to cook, and a lot of hobbies that we worked on. But I don't think that is how we imagine our world. And then how everyone pointed out, like, how something new came up, which is the new normal. What was the new normal? Wearing face mask, having social distances, canceling social gatherings. I am talking from a normal general student point of view. When it is the time for exploring, we were captivated. Youth were asked to go back to their houses, stay away from the people they love. Hugs and shaking hands were cancelled, and it is seen as a taboo right now. And that's what happened. And all these things happen in confinement of four walls. How would this affect someone's mental health? You cannot even expect students to concentrate on studies. I was just reading one of the messages just now, which said about, yes, the grades also went down. I totally agree to that. Grades went down, even though it's so easy to score. It's not because of the way the studies are going on, the education is going on. Why the grades are going down? It's because of the way people are feeling. We don't have any interest to look into our screen and uh, write our coursework every single day until the end of the semester for 4 whole months if it is a long semester. And if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Salim had said that, why do we have to pay thousands of dollars to sit in front of the Zoom call? Exactly, that's my point. Imagine, like, international students like us, we are paying thousands of dollars to our university just to pay for some online class where I'm sitting at my home. Yes, maybe in the comfort in my room, but I don't think that's what we all want. We want to be in amongst people where uh, we want to be around people raising hands. Actually, I believe raising hands, facing the lecturer, that's something where we learn from. And that suddenly just stopped. Yeah, a lot of people, they don't really like to come forward in situations where they have to ask questions. But if I'm talking about the youth, just imagine from a classroom where you ask and talk to students were literally closed. And the fact, I'm just talking about the youth, from the youth perspective, I have seen my lecturers, our own lecturers, how they had to suffer and face all these problems. Like, lecturers who were um, whom we used to be scared of looking at, like, okay, he or she is coming in the class, and now we are even reluctant to open our screen for them. And the number of times certain lecturers keep asking, are you there? And the people, like lecturers, they speak to hundreds and thousands of students, minimum 40 students every single day. From there, talking to a screen was something was which affected drastically in a lot of people. A lot of people lost their jobs. I'll not even go there. That's like very, very melancholy. That is a melancholy. But going back, if I want to talk about just the lecturer's point of view, talking to the screen for hours and asking questions were not being answered for, that is not the way nobody had ever imagined the world to be. And amongst all these things, what saddens the most is that there's literally nothing that we can do about it. From a statistical report that I have found, I think you can find it in internet as well. And if you want, I can share the link as well later. There are like 73% of students experience school closures. Yes, if I talk about some rural states of India, if I talk about some underdeveloped countries in the world, where when the schools were closed and the education was taken in online and digital, excuse me, that didn't really help them. That really affected them. Yes, and that didn't affect them any other way more than what had affected was their education. They had no means of communicating with the education institutions. It's because of their underprivileged lifestyle. They didn't have a computer to go online, or a mobile phone, or maybe an internet, a sober internet connection, and it, and that just ruined their dreams. It's been 8 months, 8 9 months that we have been stuck in our houses, and it isn't helping. Yes, government is trying to give away laptops. Schools are trying to help. Where like I think Mr. Bilal said that in Australia some universities are giving away laptops to the students. In Malaysia they have been trying to do that as well. But how many students can we help? Like, there are thousands of them. How many can we help? And there even if there are a minority number of people, that is also being affected. And imagine if there could be a lawyer and a doctor and an engineer or a life savior somewhere amongst all of them, but we cannot help them. It's because we are helpless. 13% of the students had no access. This is where I'm going from no access to a brighter future. Yes, maybe they know that they have their system there. Okay, they have the laptop there, they have their Wi-Fi connection there, but this 13% of students, they didn't know where to go with this. Like Miss Aliezeh, who started that, she's in her final year and she's going to graduate. The hurdles, we can't even imagine. Being a medical student, I'm from business faculty. I myself, I'm facing so much problems with my education. I can merely imagine how a dentistry student from dentistry, engineering, medicals, medicines, how these students are trying to cope up, especially in the final year, when they have final year project, when they have extracurricular activities that they have to submit on the basis of their subjects, on their thesis report. I have no idea how they're working, but I can only imagine how difficult it must be for them. So even though they have access to facilities, they don't have the access to what they want to do. And I think a lot of students also can relate with me with this. And one of the other points is there is 65% less learning. Yes, I would go back to the point where someone again shared that our grades went down. It's because it's not that our lecturers are not providing us proper lectures. It's just that we don't have the mental state that where we can go and listen to what they're saying, because we don't have the interest. I'm looking into my whole four walls and I'm just looking at the computer screen and trying to score good CGPA for I don't know what is gonna come in the future. That's what is stopping a lot of people. That's what is stopping us to take youth a step forward towards the success. Recently, we have moved into IR 4.0, Industry Revolution 4.0, where we were actually imagining a whole new world with a lot of opportunities. But what we can see is no employment opportunities. We can see disabilities, financial constraints, emotional breakdowns, committing suicides, I think that's a very sensitive topic to talk about, but we all know that how many people already have committed to that. They have gone to that extent. And let me quote you, it is mostly the youngsters, it's the youth. And the people who were above the youth, it's because of the people who lost their jobs, who know that they cannot put food, could not put food on the tables of their families, couldn't make the ends meet, had to give up their life, and it was that worse. We have also heard that how governments had to take some governments in certain countries, they also decided to give up. It was all over the place, and it didn't affect only the youth, it affected the whole wide world in every way. But youth is actually the most number of percentage of living beings, if I mention it, in the world right now. And this youth is going to be tomorrow's future. Now, I don't know what future we're going to wake up to if our future in the present is not being nurtured the way we wanted it to be. And I am not trying to spread any negativity over here, but I'm just trying to say that the dreams of a better world, it has some setback. Yeah, now everything is so modern, so digitalized, and everything has gone to a level where things can be done within the blink of an eye. It's all in the tip of your finger. But what is affecting us is the interest, is the ability to work, and of course the opportunities to put in the right platform and your right self. So these are enough to explain what is happening. And I think it's my last slide to conclude. What can we do? Actually, this is a question to all of you. I have been looking for this answer for a very long time, ever since the pandemic had hit in March in Malaysia. In 14th of March, we went to lockdown. Lockdown was eased, and then again it was strict. It was again eased, and again it was strict, because we're in a third wave now. I'm pretty sure it's going to be again a very strict one. The thing is, my question to where I have not found an answer to is, what can we do about it? How can we work to this? We cannot. It's really hard to accept to something very simple, which is new to us. And this whole thing, the new normal, it is a whole way different, a whole lot of a different story to talk about. And I really not know that if we will be having this in our history book in 10 years from now, or even 5 years from now. Maybe our children can see that. But what I know is living this pandemic, this era of lockdown where things totally change overnight, is something that we all should be giving a pat on our backs to the people who survive, to the people who is still trying to make their ends meet, to the students who are still suffering but still trying to keep that score because they have to be proud student for the next better future, and to everyone who has contributed some way or the other to give us this world and the place that we're living in today. So I think that will be it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rakib. Very useful talk, and I'm looking at the question answers and chat session of your colleagues over here. They are very happy from your talk. Thank you, Rakib.
Thank you.
Thank you. May I invite our next speaker, Ms. Irem Akhter. She is from the Faculty of Medicine. She is fourth-year medical student in Istanbul University, Turkey. Currently, she is serving as a EMSA as Medical Education Director of the term of 2021. And she's a medical education trainer by IFMSA and soft skill trainer by EMSA. So may I invite Ms. Irem Akhter?
Hello, let me just share my screen. Is it visible for everyone?
We can hear you, and your presentation is just loading. Yes, we can see your presentation. Yes, Irem?
Okay,
you
great.
Can start.
Firstly, it's a great honor to be here with you today and speaking to all of you. My name is Irem Akhter. I'm a fourth-year medical student in Istanbul University, Istanbul Faculty of Medicine, Turkey. And I'm currently the Medical Education Director of EMSA. And today I will be talking about COVID-19 impact on medical education and attitudes of European medical students to distance learning and undergraduate student employment. It will be a little bit different from the points that I mentioned before, and I hope it will bring us a good discussion for all of you. So here comes a small introduction to EMSA. EMSA was founded in 1990 in Brussels, and it's a non-government, non-profit non-governmental and non-profit organization that aims to gather European medical students to advocate together and envisions a united and solidarity Europe, and empowers medical students to advocate health in all policies, excellence in medical research and professional education, and protection of human rights across Europe. And we have 6 pillars that are named as medical science, medical education, public health, health policy, European integration and culture, and medical ethics and human rights. These are the areas that we're basically working on. So here we are at distance learning part. Distance learning is sometimes referred as online education or e-learning. It's a highly utilized sector that 160 million students are estimated to use by 2025. And it's basically the form of education in which the use of various technologies are applied in order to create student-student and teacher-student interaction without the physical content. We can examine it in 2 ways. And the first one is process prioritized. It's basically the participation, discussion, forums, question and answers parts. And the second one is content prioritized. It's basically the resources accessible to tutors and tutorials. So the first one is less interactive, and second one is, I would say, more interactive and more student-based. So as EMSA, when we had the lockdown all over the world, we have conducted a survey study on attitudes of medical students to distance learning between 28th of March and 13th of April 2020. We sent a 24-item online questionnaire to medical students in our faculty member organizations. And in the first part, we have asked questions relating to communication between students and their schools. And in the second part, we aim to ask questions regarding their attitudes, their contributions, their ideas regarding ongoing distance learning. So here is the first figure. It shows the satisfaction rate on student involvement. Most students voted 3 out of 5. So we definitely see that there is a lack of communication between schools, especially they feel like they can't have the right to speak in decision making regarding their rights and their education. And when we check their feedback systems, if it still exists or not, 40% said that yes, even if it's online, we can give feedback and we can get feedback from our school. But 35% said definitely no, and 25% said we don't know what is going on and we're not sure about the feedback system. That's pretty sad to see. Here is the second important and one of the biggest questions. We have determined some parameters affecting overall satisfaction rate of distance learning. And we have decided on 10 of them, which are lectures, teaching environments, technical preparedness, educational content, presentations, provided resources, platform design, user interface. And according to these answers, we have seen that most important thing for students to be satisfied by this type of distance learning are the provided sources and platform design. So it brings us to the discussion part. Firstly, the rapid response taken by universities show that medical schools are actually prepared to switch to distance learning modality of teaching. We have really taken a great action and something that we should be proud of. But at the same time, the fact that nearly a third of medical schools surveyed rated their educational sources in distance learning as less than satisfactory poses a great problem. In the meantime, distance learning should not compromise the quality of education, especially if it is not carried out for a long term. And at this point, the question arises to what degree this situation would impact medical students in training as future physicians, since most of the medical curricula is based on practical knowledge. And these are things that we can't, unfortunately, do properly via distance learning. Here now we are at the student employment part. In medical education, many different approaches for better skills education have been developed. But although all these technological development, the main apprenticeship philosophy and its application has never changed. Therefore, we still have clerkship years and clinical years, and especially the last years, for us to have transition from medical student to junior doctors. Many countries actually have regulations for these clerkships, and they're balancing these responsibilities we are having as they're balancing it between being a doctor and being a student. But sometimes there can be lines crossed. Like sometimes you may feel so overwhelmed, and you can feel like you're working as a doctor in under normal situations when you're in your, especially last year. But right now, what we faced at that time was definitely beyond a line cross. So as you can see here, Italian government and United Kingdom government announced that they will be hiring last year students before their graduation, and they will just let them graduate. They will take them to the field, and they will have to work because there was a shortage in healthcare systems due to COVID-19. It was really overwhelming for everyone. So we have conducted another survey, which is about current situation on undergraduate medical students' employment during COVID-19. And we have sent another questionnaire for 6 items for local coordinators and 8 items for national coordinators. So the first question we asked was, are final year students currently being asked to employed in your faculty? And the results were remarkable because 45% of medical students were somehow being employed, although mostly it was voluntarily. And in the second part, we asked how early employment would affect them in a couple of parameters down there. And those were mental health and well-being, transition of students to the junior doctors, clinical experience of students, and quality of education. Actually, medical students believe that this type of employment can increase the clinical experience of students, but at the same time, it can definitely compromise mental health and well-being, as well as a transition of students to junior doctors. And they mostly voted 1 or 2 out of 5. For the national bodies, we have seen that most countries do not have national regulations for emergency situations, the regulations on especially student employment, because although we have regulations during our clerkship and final year studies, it's really lacking. Therefore, we did have the problem, and 50% of students do not know if they have the legal liability, if they have to work that way. That was also a remarkable situation. So regarding discussion points, occupational safety is important because healthcare workers are in the front line, and employing undergraduate medical students in any direct patient care is not recommended unless there's an urgent need. And also, as shown in our small-scale study, students' mental health and well-being can be definitely negatively affected. According to CDC and OSHA, if this is the case to hire students, there are 3 things to consider. We should definitely be reducing risk facility by minimizing the contact. We should be isolating infected patients as soon as possible, as well as protecting healthcare workers as good as possible. So here comes our general recommendations to medical faculties. The first part is about distance learning. We should be definitely including all possible stakeholders. This will help institutions to overcome possible conflicts regarding education. Communication and feedback should be definitely sought out, and students should be involved in decision-making processes. Needs assessments should be periodically done to see the possible rooms for improvement, and institutions should definitely provide infrastructure for the students who are in need. At the same time, proper instructions and guidance should be provided to cope with the possible e-learning strengths and mental burnout that it can bring. For the assessment, we do believe that summative assessments should not be sought because we are definitely lacking bedside education. And rather than summative assessment, we should go with formative assessments that only cover some theoretical knowledge. So for the student employment, we're recommending that last year students should not be kept accountable to have the same competencies as medical doctors. They should have the clear information about their graduation date, and no students should be forced to work without proper agreement on volunteering. As they also should be provided definitely with consultants while working on the field. So here I have tried to summarize our survey, and both of them gathered important points, especially how students feel about distance learning and how student employment is going on at least in Europe. I hope that was useful for you. If you have any further questions, I will be writing my email addresses to the chat, and you can reach out to EMSA for any kind of collaboration through these channels that I'm sharing right now. We would really love to hear your opinions or conduct further projects. Thank you very much for listening to me and for your valuable time.
Thank you, Irem. I was listening in very keenly because you conducted a survey and presented your research work. We are proud of you. Thank you. Thank you very much. May I invite our next presenter, Mr. Mohammed Abdullah. He is from Islamic International Medical College, Rifa International University, Islamabad. He is also a member of International Federation of Medical Student Association, IFMSA. Mr. Abdullah, please share your slide.
Assalamualaikum, everybody. Huge welcome to everybody from the Host Institute because I'm also representing our college over here. And thank you, Dr. Aliezeh, for that warm welcome and introduction. I'll be sharing my screen now. Please tell me if it's visible. Is it visible now, ma'am?
Yes, we can see.
All right. I think the perk of being somewhere in the middle or at the end of the speakers list is that you get to hone yourself with everything what everybody has said and you pick out the good points. So that's a really good thing to have, you know, to listen to everybody and then present your point of view. And I think the downside of it is that some of the points that I was going to talk about have already been mentioned, but stay put and bear with me if I'll try my best to make sure that my points are as original, they sound as original as possible. The topic that I have right now in front of you, and I'm sure you might be able to see it, is very similar to what my colleague Hani talked about a few minutes ago. It's something that I think that's very much required in times of crisis like this, that we always need to look for something to do to make things right. And to make sure that how can we weave our way into understanding to make things better for ourselves and then for the other persons or the other people around us. I think that's very important, and I'll be moving on with some of the points that I feel are very crucial in understanding what kind of things that we can do in a situation where there's not much in our control. The first thing I think is it's something that's debatable, but it has given me an opportunity at least, and I would like to share that with everybody over here, is the concept of research and review during these 8 months that I have faced, and everybody has faced during the coronavirus pandemic lockdown. The opportunities to review and research in a medical student's life, and I'm sure in every student of every discipline, is something that keeps on coming in our path to becoming a better professional. And being a medical student, I think many of my colleagues over here are medical students. They'll understand that the kind of undergraduate reviews and research that we're pretty much involved in today's culture is crucial to understanding how we can become better healthcare providers. And because we are so much overwhelmed with a lot of work that we have to do in our field, a lot of study that has to go in, a lot of practical work that we've been missing, like some of my colleagues already mentioned in our clinical rotations. We have this time to invest in research and review, not in terms of getting samples like Irem was very much fortunate to get, and I'm really happy that she was able to share that with us. There's also this arena of review, which was very much hyped up during this pandemic, and I've studied about it, and actually been a part of this, part of review and research process myself in the process of publications. Students have invested their time in trying to understand the pandemic's course in many different aspects. The pandemic's course in terms of economics, like already has been discussed. The pandemic's course in terms of learning how the virus works if it comes to health sciences, and learning about the pandemic in terms of public health, which at the end of the day is an infectious disease and is a prime matter of public health. So students have been a huge part of this themselves. They have gathered information from credible sources and from environment, especially medical students. And I invite everybody to look into this when everybody gets the time to. That a huge lot of information that has come up, along with misinformation that has been unfortunately been resurfacing every now and then, this crucial information that has been coming up has been life-saving in terms of how we are able to access and control the parameters that are in our control. In how do we deal with the virus? How do we deal with day-to-day life activities? And how can we convert those days that we have and time that we have left in our hands and convert them into actual publications and actual messages for people who are around us and across the globe. So this time that has been, and we have got this time to play with now, it can be invested in doing these kinds of tasks where you're not when you're not only educating yourself, but in the process you are radiating that education of review and research to everybody around you. So this particular aspect of getting involved in researching about new things and being an active member of a publication society is something that has been one of the foremost opportunities that I see which were not, initially been given that much importance, but now they are, because this is a time of information. People need this information for something that we don't quite understand even 8 months into it. I'm sorry, I'm a year into it, because the coronavirus emerged in December last year. It's amazing how time has passed, and it's amazing how they've been. And I would just like to give a pat, like Rakib said earlier, to everybody over here, that we've been able to somehow manage ourselves and gone through this huge amount of time, and with so much sacrifice of life and time and emotions, we've been able to diverse that and put out something that's informative for everybody through researching and reviewing every single day and figuring out how do we get out of this, and how do we, if not out of this, how do we cope with it. So that's one. And I think that should be helpful for every medical student as well as students from other disciplines. The second thing, I think it's one of those things that has been, what I can say, a motivational factor for me to talk about this topic, because it's one of those things that I've personally worked on during this time. And their credibility has been increased to so much extent because many major universities are offering these, which you can see on the screen, are credible online courses. Recently talked about by Bilal about Coursera, edX, and from Khan Academy and everybody. I agree 100% with everything that is being said about academia and institutional classes and in-person reviews. But in a point like this, in a point of crisis, as Aliezeh initially mentioned, there is something that we have to do to make, if not the best, but what is something that's next to best that we can do to become better health. And I did a lot of how can I make that possible, because in my third year of medical school, we were initially beginning to understand about clinical work. And in my medical school, it's been a culture of taking us to hospitals from the very first year. This year, it was on a magnified scale because it involved real patient interactions and real procedures. And we were beginning to enjoy that. And that's it. In 3 months, we were not able to do it. But we had to find something that's next best to it, something that is still not that useful, but still useful to keep my mind fresh. And in terms of how can I become a better provider in terms of my knowledge. So I did some research, I dived into it, and I tried to figure out that how can this work. So, I found this source in terms of, it was already present, but it hasn't been this useful before. I'll give you an example of the online courses that have resurfaced, and it's been a huge development in this time of pandemic. The courses regarding the virus and the pandemic itself, from universities like Johns Hopkins, which has been on the forefront of providing this information of credible data about the virus. And not only Johns Hopkins, I'm talking about Harvard, and I'm talking about Stanford, and I'm talking about Yale. Ivy League has been a huge impactful factor, not only in our lives, but in a point like this, in a time like this, when we really need credible information and credible sources to learn about specific matters, and not only about the virus. This time can be utilized to learn about your own particular discipline. As already been mentioned, it's already been mentioned that there are so many courses that you can do, and you can go through them and learn about these times. Learn about these different disciplines in terms of engineering, in terms of management, psychology, a huge array of disciplines that can be learned about through these online courses. And I really encourage all of you to take part in these, because this is a quality use of your time. You're not able to, again, you're not only able to educate yourself, but through them, you're going to be able to pass on this information to everybody around you. And that is what we need at the end of the day, to be able to learn better about the things that we're not able to learn during this time, or in a time where we don't know much about everything, and so much has been changing. It's been a rapid transition to so many new disciplines. The next thing I'm going to talk about is something that's very, very specific to healthcare and very, very specific to medical students. The mention of electives was particularly made earlier. And for a medical student, I'm pretty sure all of you might understand that clinical hands-on work and going into the hospital, talking to the patient, taking a history of DKA and performing sutures, whatever course that comes up, the patient to doctor interaction is something that is hugely important. Our education there will be a huge gap in it if that's not been made. But again, this is not a time of complaints. We're 8 months into. This is a time that we need to figure out how can we go about it. And this concept of telerotations did come up during this time, particularly in the United States, where many students go to further clinical electives, and particularly in Europe too. This concept has been introduced in Europe too, and I'm sure Irem might know about it already. The students were allowed, if they cannot do their work hands-on, they were allowed to interact with university faculty members and clinical rotation members who are already there, the frontline workers, to interact with them through this source of online learning, through Zoom webinars and Microsoft Teams and whatever source of information and communication that was available. And they were able to telerotate or online rotate in different faculties in different fields of medicine, in terms, when we talk about surgery, or when we talk about cardiovascular or psychiatry. All these rotations were now put on online. And this, if not given them the best thing that they were able to during their hands-on clinical experience rotations, this did give them at least some benefit in understanding how the process works. So again, students who were able to grasp on these opportunities, they do have an edge, like Aliezeh mentioned earlier, they do have an edge in understanding how the process actually works, if not the hands-on experience. Because again, your eyes cannot see what your mind isn't. And in this way, you're actually training your mind to understand how the clinical hands-on rotation process works in real life. So if in future we're able to go in these situations, we won't be going empty-handed. There will be something in our hands to play with and something in our hands to work with. And it's something that's, I think that's something that's very useful in terms of medical students and in terms of everybody who wants to be a part of it. The next thing that has been talked about earlier is a study schedule and the topic of productivity. When you immediately transit to a time where you don't have a proper schedule, where you're waking up to virtually nothing in the morning. Before we were used to going to the campus in the morning, getting ready for it. We had an 8-hour schedule of classes and then some hours of rotation, and come back home, do your work. There was this cycle, an organized cycle that was made for us. But that changed immediately overnight. And this was something that just came on and stuck us with the huge proximity that what should we do about it now? There's so much time, yet that there's no time. I think this was a test for all of us students, and this is currently a test of our credibility, of how much we want to invest our time to actually learn. That given a situation that abruptly changes in front of us, what are we going to do? With all this time in hand, there are two ways to look at it. One, which many students unfortunately were not able to look at the bright side of it, and they succumbed, and they currently are, and it's really unfortunate we're not able to help them at this point. And I'm sure we can with so much communication that's been available through online. But the fact of the matter is, there is a huge amount of students who are succumbing to this pressure and not realizing what to do. Another way to look forward to it is that there's ample time in my hands, and there's so much good that I can do with it. In terms of student life, the first thing that comes in our minds is how can we learn better? Because we're missing the classroom environment, we're missing a physical interaction with our peers. how can we learn in this prospect? So this is a very individualized scenario. You can use this time, this ample time, to make sure that you learn something new and at the same time work on something that's already been discussed and taught in your institution to make yourself better at it. Make a schedule, wake up, take regular breaks in it, and make sure that you create an organized pattern of work schedule with the proper work ethic and a determination that yes, even in this time that you're going to learn. I found out personally that when this pandemic started and in the initial few days when I was not able to cope up with it, and then again I tried to make a schedule, I was able to study 8 hours and produce something that was really useful for me in terms of my education. And I was able to take regular rests at the same time, doing something that's interesting for me, doing something that something that I enjoy other than academics. So there was this huge amount of efficiency that I was able to produce. And I think this is not something that it's something that everybody can do with this huge amount of time in their hands. So this time can be used, like Hani, I think, mentioned earlier, it can be used to improve your grades if you're a procrastinator. And this time can be used to self-rediscover yourself, because it's hugely important to identify what you're good at and what you're not, and being able to get better at it. And there's no better time than this. The last topic that I will be talking about is something away from material. It's something that is, again, very, very crucial, and but not much talked about, unfortunately. And I think it should be talked about how important it is in terms of students. As students, we are so much involved in day-to-day activities in terms of competing with our peers and how to get better grades and how to get a better CGPA, how to understand things better, and as healthcare students, how to become better professionals, that it is easy for us to forget how much familial bonding counts in our personal education, in our personal development as human beings and as students. For a student, I think it's crucial how the relationship you have with your family, because for me personally, it's something that gives me the energy to do the right thing and the energy to learn more when I'm on campus, or in this case, when I'm learning online. The energy that you derive from your family is something that cannot be matched by anything else. Whatever family members that you have in your house, and if you're an international student, again, as Hani mentioned earlier, it's very important for you to use this time that you have right now to develop a stronger connection with them than you had before. For me, it was a very revealing process during these 8 months that I was able to better connect with my family, and being able to understand them better, their expectations, and what they expect from me, and their what responsibilities, a reminder of my responsibilities towards them. Because at the end of the day, when you come back home, nothing is more comforting to you than seeing a smile on their faces. And if you use this time, that is really important in terms of how much time we have in our hands. If you use this time to create a better connection with your parents, with your siblings, with your grandparents, it is something that not only develops your relationship with them, but it also makes you a better individual in society. Because the energy that you drive from your home radiates to everybody around you when you're outside of your home. So I think this time is very crucial in developing yourself as a better individual, in terms of how you create a connection with your family. It's very crucial in how much you radiate of that energy to your surroundings and how much you learn from them. So be empathetic towards them, because every time as healthcare providers, I think when I'm outside and when I see a patient in a hospital, because we started our hospital location this year, it should remind you of your family. It's something that you bring from your home. It's something that creates an emotional connection with your patient, and it's something that's going to make you a better healthcare provider, or someone that just keeps on driving and finding better ways to care your patient. That will be the end of what I wanted to say in terms of my topic. I just wanted to address one question that Rakib initially asked about what can we do about it. Rakib, as someone, I can only share my personal experience in terms of this to make this answer very clear for you and for everybody who wants to listen to this. From a personal perspective, during this coronavirus pandemic, I was affected by the virus, and unfortunately, in the initial stages, in the first wave, along with my family. I was asymptomatic. That was thankfully I was asymptomatic, but some of my family members were not asymptomatic. They had some really severe symptoms, and it wasn't easy for me to see that. In seeing your loved one suffer like that from something that you don't even truly understand, it is scary. And it does scare you. It does make you realize that how little you can control in life that we live right now. But at the same time, it made things transparent for me that there are so many uncontrollables in my life that I cannot, whatever I can do, whatever I try to, there are so many things that are out of my control. The best way to realize is to make a list of things that I can control to make things a bit better for me. Trying to understand that what are the little things, the baby things that I understand, which I can control myself, which are very few, like when do I wake up, what work do I do, how do I talk to my family, how do I understand what they're saying, and how to become a better student. These little things, they do matter, because when you work on 3 or 4 or 5 of these things during this time, you realize how much better you have become as an individual and how much you have become better as a family member and as a student at the same time, because you have utilized this time in realizing how much of this life is under your own grasp, and realizing how much of this can be done by you as an active effort, and realizing there's so much that you cannot do. Then it makes little sense of, if we cannot do something about it, then it makes little sense of for us to be worried and really panicky about it. It shifts our focus from something that we can actually do. So I think we should try to shift our focus something that we can actually do, and actually through what we can actually make a difference, rather than focusing on things that we can't actively change. That would be pretty much it from my side. Thank you for bearing with me, and thank you for giving me this time to organize this talk. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Abdullah. Thank you. You're sharing so much thing with us. Thank you very much. May I invite our fellow student, Safa Ahmed Al Mehmed. She's from Ras Al Khaimah Medical Health Sciences University, UAE.
Hello.
Miss Safa, please.
Yeah. Can you hear me clearly?
We can hear you, yes, please.
Yeah. I'm sharing the screen now. Can you see it?
Let me explain one thing. We are short of time. If we can shorten our presentation to 5 minutes, all of us, the remaining speakers, it is humbly requested to all of you. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to thank you and warm thanks to the Dean of Rak College of Dental Sciences, Professor Dr. Mohammed Mustahsan, for giving me this opportunity. And it's my pleasure to introduce myself. My name is Safa Ahmed Al Mahamid. I'm basically from Syria, but I was born and raised in United Arab Emirates. And I am a dental student at Rak Medical and Health Sciences University in United Arab Emirates. Today, I will focus on an important topic. Let's talk about coronavirus and its psychological impact on students during learning process. The coronavirus and its impact on the world. COVID-19 disease, 2019 pandemic may be stressful for people, fear and anxiety about a new disease, and what could happen can be overwhelming and cause strong emotions in adults and children. Public health actions such as social distancing can make people feel isolated and lonely and can increase stress and anxiety. However, these actions are necessary to reduce the spread of COVID-19. Coping with stress in a healthy way will make you, the people you care about, and your community stronger. The COVID-19 has resulted in schools shut all across the world. Globally, over 1.2 billion children are out of the classroom. As a result, education has changed globally, dramatically, with the distinctive rise of e-learning, online learning process, whereby teaching is undertaken remotely and on digital platforms. The coronavirus has affected education globally. Even in my country, students have been quarantined in their homes as a safety measure. E-learning, if systematically planned, can be alternative to direct education during the time of the quarantine. Research suggests that online learning has been shown to increase the retention of information and take less time, meaning the changes coronavirus have caused might be here to stay. Fear, worry, and stress are normal responses to perceived or real threats. And at times when we are faced with uncertainty or the unknown, so it's normal and understandable. People are experiencing fear in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. Added to the fear of contracting the virus in a pandemic such as COVID-19 are the significant changes to our daily lives, as our movements are restricted in support of efforts to contain and slow down the spread of the virus. Faced with the new realities of working from home, temporary employment, homeschooling for children, and lack of physical contact with their family members. Friends and colleagues, it's important that we look after our mental health as well as our physical health. World Health Organization, together with partners, is providing a guidance and advice during COVID-19 pandemic for health workers, managers of health facilities, people who are looking after children, older adults, people in isolation, and members of public more generally to help us look after our mental health. And finally, thanks for your kind attention. Maintain your mental health so that your physical health will remain well. Remember that. And this is my references. If you want to look at it, you can. And I hope you enjoy my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Safa. You are on time. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. May I invite our next speaker? And she's from Australia, Sydney, and must be night there. Miss Maha Habib. She is a student of medical sciences, and she's from the Macquarie University, Sydney. And her topic of talk is experience of traditional versus e-learning in Sydney, Australia. Miss Maha Habib. Thank you, Maha.
It's okay. Sorry if I'm a bit tired. It's 12 a.m. over here.
Yes, I know.
Super late. Is the PowerPoint sharing?
Yes, we can see your PowerPoint, and you are clear. Yes.
I'll be short and sweet because most of it has been covered anyways. So I'll be talking about my personal experience of traditional versus e-learning in Sydney, Australia. So I'll give a bit of a background about COVID in Sydney in a whole. So we had a very strict lockdown in Sydney. So basically all gatherings ceased. You weren't allowed to leave your house except for essential items, or if you had essential jobs like a nurse, doctor, or if you're working in construction. And therefore, I know, as it was mentioned earlier, universities were closed down to protect the spread. It was interesting because my uni actually became a bit of a hot spot for the cases. So it was really important for us to close down. And because I'm a first year student, it means I was only really at uni for around 4 to 5 weeks before it was closed down. So I guess my perspective is a bit interesting in the sense that I didn't really get to get a full normal uni experience in the first place. So my comparison might not be as in-depth as other people's, but I did get a bit of a taste. And I just have a little graph in there that shows the spike around March when we hit lockdown. And as you can see, it's gone down a lot because we had really good policies by our government. So it's really helped. But I'll talk about that in a second as well. So I thought I'd make it a bit simple to digest and put the pros and cons in a nice list. Obviously, there were a lot of changes during this period of time. And I think a lot of people in the beginning it was hard to adjust to the whole new online system. But obviously, there were pros and cons to this. So starting on the pro signs, I'm doing a pre-medicine course at Macquarie Uni. So basically it's 2 years and then the 4 years of medicine. So towards the pros, I found that it was really good because there was no more rote learning as such. So because during our exams, we had access to notes and all our books, everything was open book. It made it a lot easier in that sense. And I know for some people like me who struggle a bit more with rote learning, it was a good in that sense that you weren't really getting tested on how well your memory was, rather than testing on that, you were tested more on how good you were in explaining and understanding things. But then that itself had some issues, as you can see on the con side, because of the fact that it was access to all your notes and everything was open book. The cohort marks were very, very high for our year, hitting almost the high 90s, which wasn't totally usual in a medicine course, obviously. And because of that, in my uni, they only take the top 30 students. So it became super more competitive from a degree that was already so competitive. And on top of that, cheating actually became a huge issue. There was over 100 students who were caught for contract cheating within some of our courses, and they had to face a discipline committee because obviously it's hard to kind of assess whether or not students are accessing Google and other devices while they're doing their test because it is at home. So that was something that the university had to learn to deal with during the time. Another pro of online learning was flexibility. I know it's been mentioned before. It allows more time to be productive. You're able to create your own schedule, as most of it was online and you could watch in your own time. I know personally, as COVID began to die down, I was able to pick up a lot more hours, working hours as well, which helped again have that more of a balance between work and life, and that was always good. And then another thing on the con side was that, as a lot of people mentioned, in medical subjects, it is a bit hard to grasp some information such as anatomy when it's not in person, when you're not there and you can't actually see the muscles or you can't actually see the cadavers. It's a lot more difficult than just learning from a PowerPoint. So that was obviously a con. But again, as I said, marks weren't super affected because they did try and compensate for that by having open book exams and having the access to notes in that type of sense. So it was okay in that. And then at the same time, while it was flexible, I found it because you're at home and you're surrounded by a lot of distractions, it became harder to focus at times. And because you are forced to make your own schedule, I know if some people struggle with being self-disciplined like I do myself, it is a bit hard to sit down and make sure that you do study, and therefore sometimes things were missed and not as well covered as it would be in person. But I think an important part of this whole situation was it gave us a glimpse into the future of learning. I know at my uni personally, they were talking that a lot of the time they were even considering before COVID of putting things online because that is just how the future path is looking rather than seeing things in person. So it was a good way to expose that. I know as being young and only just starting uni, there is a great chance that while I am still studying, that a lot of things transfer online. So it was good in that sense. So I also put a slide for learning after COVID died down. As I said, in Australia, in Sydney, our cases really did go down. So I was back into uni around August and September. But even then, it was interesting because they made more of a mixture of classes. So some were online and some were in person. So more of the labs, as was mentioned before as well, were in person. But our quizzes and so some of our exams remained online. that way, again, it gave a good mix. And I think that is something that my uni is looking at keeping for an extended period of time, which is good that we got exposure to that now. In this way, you got the same flexibility, but in more of practical subjects like anatomy and things like that, you were still able to have in-person classes with social distancing and everything, obviously. And then final exams, they put back in person to avoid the cheating issues and to make sure that it was more competitive marks for the cohort as well, so that everyone wasn't getting high 90s because they had access to their results. So you could still have a differentiation between the grades, which is obviously important in such a competitive degree. But yeah, so my final thoughts, I think it is interesting, as I said, that it's good to get a new experience as a union student in this type of format, because this is how it is looking towards the future. I put a little graph in that's teaching strategies that they used in the UK, which is obviously quite similar to Australia. Most of it was mixed online and campus learning, which is what my uni did as well. And I think that that seems to be the most beneficial and efficient, in the sense that you get the best of both worlds, as I said, and that way you're not really missing content, and you still have the opportunity to go into person, and you'll be able to please both crowds of people that prefer in person and people that prefer online. So overall, I'm just interested to see how the uni continues into the future. But thank you for having me.
Thank you, Maha. You're on time. Thank you very much. Very valuable and useful talk. Okay, may I invite the next speaker, Rena Mallillin. She is the president, Asian Medical Student Association, Ateneo School of Medicine and Public Health, Philippines. Her title of talk is Transition to Online Learning. Will we ever be ready? So, Rena, are you there? Could you share your screen?
Yeah, hello. Sorry. There. So, can y'all see my screen?
Yes, we can hear you, and your screen is just loading, I think.
Sorry, is it okay now?
Yes, we can see. We can see now, Rena. Yes, yes.
Okay. So, good day, everyone. I am Rena Mallillin, a second-year student taking Doctor of Medicine and Masters in Business Administration from Ateneo de Manila University School of Medicine and Public Health. So I'm just here to give you a short overview of the situation of the online medical education in the Philippines. So halfway through the second semester, academic year 2019-2020, the largest island in the country and other major cities were placed under lockdown, suspending all on-site classes. Hence the sudden shift to online learning, which brought about new problems to the education system. Medical schools are no exception to these problems. So during the transition, a study was conducted by one of my professors along with my colleagues and categorized the barriers to online learning during the COVID-19 pandemic. They have identified few barriers, technological barriers caused by lack or limited access to devices due to gadget sharing at home, unstable internet access, lack of technical skills, and some issues with the online learning platform. Individual barriers, since the shift happened in the middle of the semester, most schools, a lot of the students were not mentally and physically prepared to end the semester online. Yet somehow we still did. More environmental barriers, such as domestic barriers, where homes of most medical students are not really conducive for learning. Institutional barriers, wherein school administrators were not at all prepared for this shift, leading to lack of organization, poor communication, gaps in knowledge and skills for online teaching, etc. I, for one, was privileged enough to be in a university where the plans for online education were initialized last year, but still it was fast-tracked due to the pandemic. And lastly, community barriers, where power interruptions are coupled with mobility restrictions due to curfews, and of course, social-political concerns. The country is still on lockdown, albeit more lax than it was. The first semester of the new school year started late, providing time for institutions to adjust to the online platform. Nonetheless, this shortened the term for a month. To add insult to injury, halfway through the first semester and this new school year, the first 2 weeks of November, two super typhoons hit the Philippines. Both typhoons caused massive flooding in the capital and in the provinces, causing entire homes to be submerged by flood waters and trapping residents on rooftops while waiting to be rescued. The poor disaster response from the government on top of the academic workload has really affected the students' well-being, which prompted a widespread clamor for suspension of classes and a call for a nationwide academic strike. The Academics Council in ASMPH conducted the student-led focus group discussions to assess the current situation of online learning. This outlined what works, what did not work, and the current well-being of students. We've observed that self-paced learning and asynchronous submission of requirements really work well for students, as this accounts for students who were directly affected by the calamity. However, this comes with a disadvantage of unguided learning, where some lecturers provide pre-made YouTube videos or require readings from the book without actually lecturing. Moreover, the asynchronous learning seemed to have a lack of boundaries on work hours, as class announcements are posted during late evenings and group works, which most students disapprove of, were intended to be done over the weekend. There are some inconsistencies as well in proctoring protocols across modules, where students were required to use two devices on one exam, which was unfair for students who have an unstable internet. On the contrary, the occasional and interactive synchronous lectures and student group discussions were generally well liked by students as a good way to enforce learned topics and learn clinical pearls from the preceptors. The faculty were particularly amenable in schedules and their recommended study schedules, but were highly appreciated. However, there were times that their recommended time allotment seems exclusive of reading the textbook, doing assignments on that topic, and grasping the topic in general, which is not really as helpful since the topics were already compressed in a short semester. So as you can see, despite the 1 month preparation before the semester with the current system for online education, there is still a progressive decline with occasional respite for the medical students' mental health. These are caused by several factors such as the academic workload, especially that we are in a dual degree program. The calamities previously mentioned and the current socio-political climate of the Philippines exacerbated the anxiety from schoolwork. Students felt bad about the national situation in general and wanted a suspension of classes in solidarity with affected classmates. Through this, the school administration was able to develop policies and guidelines based on the students' insights. So these are just a few takeaways from what we've experienced the past few weeks in the Philippines. This pandemic widened socio-economic gaps, including education. Medical school is already a privilege as it is, while there had been an overwhelming opportunities online for medical students since the world practically shifted online. There's no denying that these are only limited to those who have access. The pandemic disrupted medical education worldwide, and I believe that we all have a long way to go. This is the best time to encourage medical students to be involved in improving medical education system in the country, especially as we are the ones who are greatly affected. Imploring them to take part in decision-making process of their institution can make a long-term change. So transition learning, will we ever be ready? Well, yes, I want to believe so. It will happen when institutions start making their students the primary stakeholder in crafting a more equitable access to education. That ends my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rena. I like your word transition of learning. Yes, it's a transition, and we have to adopt and adapt it slowly and gradually. Thank you, Rena. Thank you very much. May I invite Ms. Joweria Batool Ekram from University of Calgary, Canada. Her topic of talk is experiencing sharing of online learning and teaching during COVID-19. Joweria is fourth year health sciences student in bioinformatics. Ms. Joweria.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see your presentation now, Javier. We can see. Please, you start, please.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so my presentation is just about my personal experience during the COVID-19 online learning. And so first I'll just go over a little bit about me. I'm Joweria Ekram, and I'm in the final year of the Bachelor of Health Sciences program at the University of Calgary in Canada. In this presentation, I broke down my university experience to 3 core aspects. I often describe my bioinformatics major as a major in both biomedical sciences and in computer science, which means switching between learning styles in courses quite often. My program also has a heavy focus on research, which means not only do I have to do my courses online, I also have to do my thesis online. And lastly, a major part of my pre-COVID university experience were my extracurriculars, and the way they run has been majorly changed now. So I'll start with talking about my courses. Like I said, being in bioinformatics, we were already switching learning methods on a regular basis. So I do think that that gave me an advantage when everything went online, as we had already learned to be flexible with our courses. So that skill translated well during COVID. There were quite a few changes with my biomedical courses. My program doesn't do online proctoring for practical reasons. So all of a sudden, my professors had to assume all assessments were open book. Since most of the biomedical courses are memorization based, we definitely couldn't be assessed the same way as always. And this led to a variety of different grading techniques, including more essays, reading papers, and critical thinkings were emphasized. So students were assessed on something beyond the Control F function on their laptops. An advantage that I've noticed in the online learning format is the way that we're taught the courses and assessed on the application of the course materials. Personally, this learning style suits me better than the memorization format. So during COVID, I did 3 types of computer science courses. For the one that required heavy coding, we went from being assessed directly on our coding techniques in smaller questions that were meant to be written in 2 hours to a 24-hour-long exam that tested how long we can apply those coding techniques to larger situations. Another one of my courses decided not to have any tests or finals. Instead, we were given weekly assignments, news blogs, and tutorials that we were to successfully complete for our grade. And lastly, my current course's grade comes from 3 tests. Again, my professor had to assume that our tests were open book, and since there's not a lot of ways you can assess a student's knowledge on history, our teacher compensated with testing us on minor details. Other than the assessment methods, we also had to adjust to the pace of the course. The course is non-synchronous, which means that we had no live lectures for it. He just posted videos. Our biggest challenge was when he decided to post 14 hours of lecture content the week before the midterm, when it was supposed to be just 3 hours. At that point, we overcame our challenge by teamwork. We split the videos up between 6 people, so everybody had to make detailed notes for a little over 2 hours worth of content, and then we combined the notes and studied from the document. From that week, I realized that giving the professors some feedback on what you would like him to continue and what can be altered is essential in this style of learning, where contact with the professor is very limited. The COVID protocols have led us to find innovative ways to network with our peers. The use of Discord as a connector for classmates has increased widely, and that's actually where I found my study group for this course. Furthermore, I've been working on my thesis online. I think a challenge that comes with a thesis course, even without taking online school into consideration, is time management. We're asked to commit 15 to 20 hours a week to our thesis, but the only scheduled time are the 3 hours of lecture. This becomes increasingly hard when you're at home all day. Another thing that you can quickly lose track of is keeping your supervisor updated on where you are with your project. Since contact is minimized, asking for them for help also becomes harder. I personally try to tackle this issue by arranging a bi-weekly meeting with my supervisor, even if I feel like I have no progress or nothing to talk about. In my previous research experience, my professor would have these weekly blogs that you would have to update, in which we had to list down everything we accomplished that week, what we struggled with, and what we plan to do the week after. I've learned to implement those into my thesis project just so I can keep up with the timeline I set for myself. Another challenge that comes with with doing my thesis online is not having the same resources. In university, I had specially built CPUs wired to handle large programs. However, my laptop doesn't have the same capabilities. So finding a way around the issues that follow this lead me to develop creative solutions for minor things. for minor things. One major pro of having everything online, though, is the conferences I can attend. People from across North America and globally, really, can easily be a part of various conferences, as most of these presentations are scheduled to be online. Due to this, we have more of a chance to explore research experiences being done in other cities easily. Events and extracurriculars might be the hardest aspect to adjust to for me. None of the events have the same impact as the in-person events would. Different clubs have different requirements, and some are able to thrive while others have to take a backseat for the time being. For example, I'm part of the Pakistani Student Society Club in university, and our biggest strength was fundraising from social events. We used to host multiple social events for Pakistanis on campus, and we would have huge attendance rates ranging from 70 to 300 people, depending on the event. In-person events are not socially responsible anymore, so this year, not only have our online events been on a more small scale, but we've also had less chance to host these events. On the other hand, I'm also part of the Bioinformatics Club, and all of our usual events have continued as normal and have in fact had better attendance rate with the online format, because people now have more time outside of live classes. And I think I started off this year really missing the social aspect of university. And while it's not the same thing without events and clubs, my friends and I decided to do regular online social interactions as to ensure we're checking up on each other's mental health as well as taking a break every now and then. So thank you for your time, and that was my presentation.
Thank you, Joweria. Very useful presentation. Thank you very much for giving your valuable time to all of us. Our next presenter is Nyambura Muroki. She is from Health Sciences, University of Nairobi, Kenya. Her topic and title of the talk is The Disruption of Education, Kenyan Perspective. Nyambura is a fourth-year medical student in Kenya and also a IFMSA liaison officer to student organizations.
Hi, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can listen to you and we can see your presentation both.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. My name is Nyambura. I'm a medical student from Kenya, and I'll be sharing what the disruption of education has meant from a Kenyan perspective. Disruption in this case kind of has a double wordplay in terms of the fact that it was disrupted, but also that it's been revolutionized, and COVID has been very disruptive to education and learning. There we go. So just as a bit of background, Kenya is a country in East Africa. It has 47 million people, 72% of whom live in the rural areas of Kenya. We are one of the, so Kenya is termed as the Silicon Savannah because it's an ICT hub on the continent. So we have the highest mobile penetration on the continent, but that's just at a penetration of 36% of smartphones. So 36% of people have smartphones. So this is what happened in Kenya. We recorded our first case of COVID in March, on the 13th of March, and a week later, the government announced that schools would be closed. This affected 17 million learners across the board, so from primary education to institutions of tertiary learning. As a result, the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development introduced home-based learning through radio, TV, and online-based learning. On the 7th of July, the government announced that the academic year had been lost, and that students would have to, particularly from secondary school going low, would have to repeat the year starting in January. In October, the government decided to pilot reopening of schools, and they opened schools for junior school, primary school, high school, the final year of all learning, and they resumed physical learning. In November this month, the government finally announced a date when schools would fully reopen. This, however, is in the midst of surging cases of COVID-19, and the situation in Kenya continues to worsen. So what the realities of learning during a pandemic have been, it's been very different. The first thing is that it's obviously been an abrupt disruption. There was no time for us to transition from in-person learning to virtual learning. Medical schools in Kenya barely any had digital learning arrangements. All of it was full in-person learning. So COVID-19 just came one day and everything changed. So as a result of that, technology preceded policy. And we kind of were playing catch up. Schools, universities, and other institutions of learning were playing catch up because they didn't have any policies. So we've seen parents take schools to court because they're asking, why are we paying the same amount of school fees for online learning? And children are not getting in-person contact with their teachers and lecturers. Then the other thing is that the Data Protection Act has been breached in terms using things like Google Classroom. Our Data Protection Act says that all data should be stored within the country. So there's just a lot of policy issues going on. Then I think many people have spoken about this, spoken to the fact that inequality has been exacerbated by COVID-19, and particularly with the last mile challenge. So Kenya is very tech savvy. However, there's a huge digital divide. The amount of people in rural areas who have access to internet, electricity, gadgets is so much, is far removed from the people in the urban centers. So this has posed a challenge, particularly in institutions of higher learning that resumed virtual classes. You've had students walk 20 kilometers just to have their devices charged and to get some internet connectivity. So this has caused real challenges in access. Then the other realities are the socioeconomic realities of the pandemic. Lots of people have lost their businesses, parents lost their jobs, sponsors pulled out of sponsoring people's education. So this has had an effect, and people have had to source for funds for their families. And so the uptake of digital learning has been compromised by this. And it's, I don't know if anyone mentioned this, but I think that the access for women has been disproportionately affected. And we are seeing a lot of teenage pregnancies and things like those. So then the other thing which has been exhausted, and I wouldn't want to belabor, is just the effect of virtual learning on well-being and mental health. So I see this as a paradigm shift in learning. And I think that COVID-19, if anything, will revolutionize how we learn in the whole spectrum. So all levels of learning will change as a result of COVID-19. And the first thing I think will happen is that learning has been digitized, and there's a lot of investment both from the public and the private sector on infrastructure to support this virtual learning. We're seeing governments start forming infrastructure for e-learning with universities and across the board. Then the other thing we are seeing as a result, and particularly in medical school, is that telemedicine is now starting to be mainstreamed, and the current crop of medical students will be trained with a lens that sees the world from a tech lens. And then internet subscriptions have obviously shot up, so we are seeing internet being integrated into learning at all levels. Then the other thing is innovation. There's a lot of innovation going on within the country and even across boundaries. One of the things we saw is pharmacy and engineering students in one of the public universities in Kenya actually build a mechanical ventilator for COVID-19 patients. We've seen tech apps and tech startups come up to improve access to virtual learning. Then, and there's just a whole lot of innovation going on. Collaboration has increased. It's now easier to collaborate across and within faculties, but even across borders. With IFMSA, where I serve as a liaison officer to student organizations, we're seeing students from Kenya partner with students from Indonesia to come up with new innovative solutions for health and other spaces. Then finally, globalization. I think more than anything, now I can access a course from Harvard, from Nairobi, or from Pakistan. You can learn about what's happening in Nairobi from where you are. So the prohibitive costs of accessing global education are now greatly cut down. So I think that in a nutshell, that there's great things, there's been serious challenges, but a lot of that are going to be transformed into opportunities, and learning will be revolutionized. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to connect on social media and on email. Thank you.
Thank you, Nyambura. Thank you very much. Very useful and very good presentation. Let me start a little bit. We have decided the panel discussion and the time was 20 minutes, but we already short of time. And then I think it's Australia, it's 12 a.m. plus time. So we can shorten our panel discussion. But we have some questions from the student speakers, and we can have some question. We have panelists in the panel discussion. Let me introduce them as well. Can you put on your camera when I take your name? We have Shanze Ramzan. Shanze, please put on your camera. We have Sumaya Shehzad from Rehabilitation Sciences from Rifa International University. We have Usama Muhammad Nadeem from Pharmaceutical Sciences, Rifa International University. We have Isra Khan, medical student, fourth year medical student from Ayub Medical College. Can you, please, can I listen voice of all four of you? Shanze.
Ma'am. Yes,
ma'am. Walaikum assalam. Walaikum assalam. Shanze, Sumaya, Usama, and Isra Khan. Let me ask you a one by one question from each of you. My first question is from Dr. Isra Khan. Isra, could you tell us what is the most pertinent challenge would you think for you is the challenge for you during the online learning? Most pertinent challenge for you during the online learning?
Well,
Isra.
basically the only challenge that I faced was that students started to create a lot of nuisance in the class. They used to play music in the background and they used to talk a lot, and there was like, we couldn't hear the teacher at all. So that was basically the only problem I faced. Other than that, our teachers, basically they teach from slides, even in the university. So that was what they were doing online as well. So we didn't face any difficulty in learning that. But the only problem was that students used to play music in the background and they used to tease the teachers a lot. So that was basically what we had the problem and issue with.
Okay, thank you very much. Isra, one more question. How medical student, can you think we can create a good doctors without practicing on the patient in online learning? What do you think about it?
Not at all. We cannot, because basically what we're learning is from the books. We don't have any knowledge how to perform anything on the patient. We don't know how to suture anything. We don't know how to cut. We have no personal experience with that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Isra. Thank you very much. Shanze Ramzan, I have a question from you. What teachers should do to motivate their student during online learning? It's a challenge. I was listening the talk of the students. They were saying to motivate the student. What teachers can do to motivate during online learning?
Yes, ma'am. So this, what I have experienced and what my teachers adapted was, I guess, most useful thing I could ever imagine. Earlier when this all started, we were so confused that we couldn't participate that actively. Then our teachers adopted a strategy like giving us some assignments, free discussions, or something that we can discuss during class, apart from what they are teaching in their PowerPoint presentations. That is, I guess, most easiest way to engage students. Otherwise, it gets so boring to get up for a Zoom class, sitting on a sofa comfortably, and we are not so like in position to participate with the teacher. So I guess
what about little software, Socrative you can use, Polyv you can use, gaming during the lecturing? What do you think about it to make it interesting?
Yes, ma'am, that is also interesting. But when we think about us, like if I consider myself in that space, in my final year, I have so much as to do going in my mind. I would like to participate in more thoughtful discussions rather than anything else.
Okay, thank you, thank you. You were Shanze? Okay, Shanze, thank you. Yes, Sumaya. Sumaya is here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, beta. Question from you. What teachers can do to maximize the student engagement during the online learning?
Ma'am, first of all, one of the things which our teachers adopted was asking questions after like every few slides. That keeps the students engaged, and just randomly asking via their names, they keep their attention focused, and they just focus on the lectures and hear every single point what the teacher is saying, because they know they're going to be questioned at the end. Apart from that, ma'am, I think engaging videos and they're very helpful for the students, actually.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A question from Osama. Osama, are you there, beta ji?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. Osama, beta, my question is that, did online teaching and learning leads to a professional engineer, doctor, pharmaceutical, manager, pharmacist? What do you think about it? What will be our future?
I believe
Yes.
that's a very complex question, and the answer is reserved for each and individual student to where they want to end up in their professional field. But hands-on learning, and for subjects like chemistry, where conceptual learning is very important from the teachers, it is highly important to have meaningful engagement and a one-on-one interaction. For that reason, I think online learning does really lack. But there's one pro for the online learning, that for the theoretical subjects, it's much better for us to learn online at home, where the teacher can interact much better with, for example, if I'm learning the drug laws as a pharmaceutical student, if I'm learning drug laws, it will be much better for me to learn at home. But for subjects like chemistry, I don't think it will lead to any professional doctor.
You're talking for the cognitive domain, for the knowledge domain, we can deliver lecture when we easily teach the online. But for the psychomotor, for the things, practical things, we need to do communication in the lab and touching the instruments and playing with the circuits and the patients. You're talking about it. So we need practice. Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Aliezeh, are you around? I have a question from you, Dr. Aliezeh.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Dr. Aliezeh, same question I'm having with you. How did you manage? How did we actually, all of us, manage to learn the clinical skill? Is there any way we can manage it online, simulation or simulator or videos or anything? Can you talk about it to help us?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Sure. So basically, I feel that how we can do it is that first of all, we have to make sure that we are strong on our theoretical stuff, all the knowledge that we have. So if we are very strong in terms of the theory, that means we have more time when we go to the hospital, that we can only concentrate on the practical stuff. So simulators, we do not have access to simulators, considering that they're in the hospital and the hospitals are closed down, the skills labs are closed down. So we do not have access to it. All we can do is we can just practice on our own family members. We can practice the clinical methods, and that can help us with the clinical methods later on when we are at the patient setting.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Javier, are you there? Javier?
Yes, I'm here.
A question from you. We're talking about the simulator. Can you tell us how simulator can use in online learning? Can we use in online?
Yes, well, there are different learning platforms online that you can find. Some of them are free, some of them are paid. Personally, I use two simulators. I use, I'm not going to give promotion to any platform, but I use one that gives me a patient every day, for example, and I have to do like sort of a clinical examination, make my questions to the patient, do some physical exam, and then I can go and try to give my diagnosis based on what the patient was presenting on symptoms. And then I used another simulator for surgery. I like a lot surgery, and I didn't want to stop my learning there. And I use one that has all of the procedures, pretty much surgical procedures, where you have like this patient, you can see it there on the table, and then it can, and the same platform goes and tells you like step by step, like, hey, if you're going to do a thoracotomy or thoracostomy, you need to do this and go step by step, doing all of the procedure. And then the same platform evaluates you to see if you memorized well the procedure, or if you need to still go over the steps and try to get better at it. So those are some of the examples of some simulators I personally use. And I know that a lot of students starting in semiology, for example, are using a lot of simulators for clinical examination and physical examination. So those are some of the things I have used on.
You will be happy if you can, at the end of your slide, you can give us the name of the softwares, because all of the students, they really want it. It's not about marketing and everything, but we want help from you. Okay?
Great. I'm going to put it here in the chat.
In the end of the slide of your PowerPoint presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you. Okay. Bilal Qureshi, are you there? Bilal.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, Bilal, you put in your slide, there was a word. What is video telephony software? You mentioned in your slide.
Yeah.
What's that? Could you explain us?
So video telephony softwares are basically, for example, Zoom, Skype. These are all video telephony software. So softwares that aid to communicate between each other. So we are using Zoom. This is a video telephony software. There are a lot of video telephony software. Echo 360 is a very good video telephony software. It's used in Australia. So what you can do is that each lecture that is taken inside classrooms, you can it's automatically uploaded to the Moodle. So yeah, so so what does video telephony software does is it communicates between each other. So Zoom, Skype, everything is video telephony.
So we also want from you at the end of your slide to please help us provide us the website or some useful, this software can be used by all the students during this COVID era and online teaching and learning. And it's an artificial intelligence era. If you have some other repertoire or resources for all of us, you can share in your last slide, please. Okay. You were talking about the Coursera and other courses as well. So we all can, if those are free, student can attend it. Soft skill or leadership skill or anything. Please share with us, all of us.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Aliezeh, do you want to ask any question from Hani? Dr. Aliezeh?
Sure, ma'am.
Yes, please.
So, hi, Hani, there's a question for you that why is it tough to focus in online classes? Can you please answer that?
Sorry there, I was muted. Yeah, definitely. It can be tough to focus on online classes, mainly because we have so many distractions, right? When you're in a lecture hall, you have the professor in front of you, so you're kind of obliged to pay attention. You can't just take out your phone and start texting someone or, check your Facebook feed or whatnot. So that's the main reason why I thought it would be a little bit more, I find that's a little bit more difficult to concentrate online.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Rakib, I have a question. Rakib, are you there? No? Rakib is not there?
Yes,
Rakib,
yes,
talk. Yes. You talk about the anxiety.
Yes.
So why? Because I'm a teacher. I'm delivering the talk online daily. It's my routine. And I'm a student as well. I'm doing PhD. I'm in the process of that. So why you talk about the anxiety during the online learning? And what do you mean by anxiety during the online learning? How we can cope it? Yes.
Okay. Coping, it differs people by people. For me, I cope it by being around the people I love, okay, which is my best friend or basically my best friends over here. But if I'm gonna talk about why there's anxiety and why am I talking about it, the anxiety of finishing a task before the submission period, the anxiety of missing out all the things that we're supposed to have, the anxiety of losing the person that we love because we are having less social interactions and even physical meetings, right? Physical meetups, face-to-face meetups, and the anxiety of actually be able to be somebody which we could have done in a different way. Because I personally have lost a lot. I mean, I had a lot of events under me which I was supposed to be doing, but then that I couldn't do. And it's not nobody's fault, but I consider it to be failing in something. Now that also gave a bit of an anxiety that I couldn't do something which I was supposed to do. It's nobody's fault, but it is a situation that we have come across. So this is what I'm talking. This anxiety of missing out everything that's happening lately. Excuse me. So yeah, this is where I wanted to relate to it. Thank you, Dr. Rahila.
Can I talk to you? You were mentioned distance learning. We are talking about the distance learning, online learning. You are sitting away from your home, isn't it?
Yes.
So
yes.
How did you talk to your mother and father?
Okay. If I talk about personal,
it's an era of. I just want to say it's an era of education, electronic education, electronic robotic education. It's all about that. So our mother, father, they are the distance. We are talking with them, and we become little relaxed when we come on the Zoom and we see. So it's my message. I'm also a teacher. I'm a dean and director. It's message to all of you. You're just like kids to me, all of you. Please adopt it and adapt it. It may be a future as well. COVID won't go till we invent the vaccine. So leave the anxiety, enjoy it, take a cup of tea and coffee, as one of the students mentioned about Abdullah mentioned about that, about the family bonding. You are near to your family, you are near to sitting at your home. So we can talk about the blended learning, some of the face-to-face and some of the online. The cognitive part can be taught online, no problem. But your psychomotor skill, your hands-on skill can be taught through on campus, but in the small groups with the social distancing. So we can go on this way. So this is the take-home message for all of you. Enjoy your learning. Don't take attention. Okay. And I also want to share that. Thank you very much, all of you. What a thanks to all of the students. You are very near to our heart. You are future of the world. We have a lot of hopes from you. We don't want you people to lose your hopes and your passion and your energy. We want to make you energized and we want to see you healthy. So no anxiety, mashallah, you're looking so smart. Yes, please. Any question?
On this note, I would just like to say I was thinking about one thing to hold this COVID era. And I don't know if I am too optimistic or I just realized that things are still not as bad as they can be. We can always find a way. It's okay. We are lacking so many skills, clinical skills, but we have time ahead, and that is a good thing. This is a time when we have to use all the knowledge that we have gained in our past years, all the learnings we have learned from our teachers who have motivated us. While obviously depression was even then there when we had exams. Depression is still here. And I guess this one is kind of lighter than we used to have. So that's my message to everyone. It's okay, even if the time is hard, like on Rakib and many others, we can still find a way, and it's okay. That's what defines us. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. We want to see smile on all of your faces. Always, always, always. Okay. Lots of prayer from my side. Lot of prayers for your best future, inshallah. God will help you, all of you. Thank you very much for participating. We are ending with a Pakistani song. Little patriotic. Sorry for it, but we are little maybe motivate you.
Right now?
No, just a national bit of song. Sakib, can you play it for all of the students? It's in the Urdu.
मोहब्बत
you all are soldiers, okay? Ready to fly? Inshallah. God will help you. Allah will help you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, all of you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Dr. Laila. Thank you.